Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Christie Lynn Mullins. Christie Lynn Mullins was born on August 28, 1960, in Columbus, Ohio, one of 6 children in a large family. They lived in a quiet neighborhood, away from the noise and chaos of the city. In the summer of 1975, 14-year-old Christie spent most of her days socializing with friends and family, often going to the local neighborhood swimming pool. In late August, Christie babysat for a family friend on the evening of August 22nd. The next day, August 23rd, she woke up around noon and decided to go swimming to cool off. She invited her sister Kim to join her and they went to the residential area. While Kim went swimming, Christie relaxed on a deck chair. A short time later, Kim went ashore and found Christie nowhere to be seen, but Kim decided not to look for her and instead stayed at the pool. Surprisingly, when Kim returned home, Christie was not there. Hours passed and Christie still hadn't come home. Kim became even more worried. She decided to look for Christie and ran into a neighbor who told her that the police had found the body of a young woman a few miles away, but they had not been able to identify it. Kim rushed home to tell her parents, who immediately called the police to report Christie missing. It was very likely that the body found belonged to Christie, so the police directed them to the morgue for identification. Although it was difficult to recognize the identity of the body due to the severely bruised face, Christie's mother eventually accepted that the body was Christie's, her beloved daughter, thanks to the birthmark on her leg. Police later explained to the family what had happened. It turned out that at about 2:30 p.m. that same day, a man reported finding a body in the woods behind the local shopping center. He, his wife, and son had gone there to buy toys, but before entering the store, their son wanted to take a walk on the trail behind the building. This path was a popular walking path leading to a river and the area was famous for its beauty. Together with his parents, the son went for a walk on this trail. During their hike, they came across a disturbing scene about 10 yards down the trail. A man was kneeling on top of someone and repeatedly beating him with a wooden object. When he saw the family, he immediately ran away. The father rushed to the scene and found a seriously injured little girl covered in blood. His wife, who had medical training, checked the victim's pulse, but there was none. The father quickly went to a nearby shopping center and called the police from a store. He and his wife provided investigators with a detailed description of the suspect, who was a tall, slim young man with long black hair, wearing jean shorts and boots, about 20 years old. Police created a sketch of the suspect based on their description and distributed it to patrol officers. However, the investigation of the crime scene yielded no results. The wooden object used as the murder weapon was found, but they discovered no other evidence linking the perpetrator. Notably, the victim's hands were tied with a telephone cord and her bikini top was pulled down. Her t-shirt and shoes were found next to her body. Despite these signs, forensic experts found no evidence that a sexual assault had occurred. Luckily, detectives were able to continue their investigation thanks to new information from Kim, who told them about a conversation between Christie and a friend, Carol. The police summoned Carol. Carol recounted to police a suspicious phone call she had received from a stranger claiming to be a local DJ. The man had called her to talk about a fake cheerleading competition at the state fair, which was supposedly being held behind the local shopping mall. He announced the event would start at 1:45 p.m. and had told Carol to wait for someone at the entrance to the forest trail. The police were skeptical about Carol's story, and when they dug deeper, they discovered many inconsistencies. According to Carol, she had originally planned to attend the event with her sister. But they had run into Christie and her sister on the way. Carol then invited Christie to join her and they left their sisters behind to go to the mall. However, when they arrived at the entrance to the woods, no one appeared and Carol claimed that she had gone to the shopping center to ask for the time. When she turned around, Christie was gone. The police investigation revealed that there had been no cheerleading competitions in town, casting doubt on the reason for Carol and Christie's trip to the woods. Police suspected that the mysterious phone call might have been a ruse to lure Carol into the woods, but they were unable to trace the call to identify the caller. Further investigation revealed discrepancies in Carol's story. She claimed to have met Christie and her sister on the street, but Kim said they had been at the pool and Carol had come to meet them there. Additionally, Christie's mother reported a strange conversation with Carol later that evening, which raised further suspicions. Carol apologized to Christie's mother and revealed that she had been the intended target of a murder involving two people. However, she quickly retracted her words and left. Christie's mother reported this to the police. The police questioned Carol again, but she denied making a statement and stuck to her original story. Carol was then given a polygraph test, which did not reveal any signs of deception when Carol answered key questions. As a result, investigators shifted focus away from Carol and pursued other leads. Police intensified their search for the killer 3 days after Christie's murder. A police officer patrolling the streets of Columbus spotted a man who bore a striking resemblance to a sketch of Christie's killer. Patrol officers quickly called detectives to the scene and asked Jack to accompany them to the station for questioning. The man, Jack Carman, 25, agreed to go with them. However, the police soon realized that Jack was severely mentally disabled, with an IQ of about 50 points. Results based on many different tests. As a result, Jack had limited communication skills and could not read or write. He was cared for by a specialist medical facility and lived in a supervised apartment. Despite these challenges, detectives could not ignore the striking resemblance between Jack and the composite sketch of the suspect in Christie's case. The interrogation process was extremely difficult due to Jack's limited ability to understand and answer questions. Most of the time, he just answered with one word or stayed silent. The detectives began to question whether Jack was capable of fully understanding their questions. To improve the situation, they had to ask very simple and specific questions. After 6 hours of questioning, detectives were finally starting to get results. They were finally able to extract a confession from Jack. According to his testimony, on the day in question he had left his apartment, taken the bus to the shopping center and bought a shirt and pants. As Jack walked through the parking lot, he saw Christie sitting on a fence near the entrance to a wooded trail. He approached her, tied her up by tying her hands, and then dragged her into the woods where he carried out the assault. After the attack, Christie tried to run away, but Jack quickly caught up with her. He picked up a nearby piece of wood and repeatedly hit her in the head. Jack then ran to the main road in front of the shopping center and boarded the bus. The next day, police took Jack to the forest where he allegedly committed the crime. There, he pointed out the exact spot and provided specific details that only the perpetrator would know, including the fact that the piece of wood used to strike the victim broke in half. Investigators also verified the testimony, asking the couple who found Christie to identify the person they had seen on the day of the incident. Both identified the man they had seen as Jack. As a result, Jack was charged with multiple offenses, including assault and murder. The prosecution chose to include it in the charges. The prosecutor initially sought the death penalty, but Jack's lawyer negotiated a deal. In exchange for a life sentence, Jack would plead guilty before the judge, thereby avoiding execution. The case moved swiftly, with thousands of people following. Just 11 days after the murder, on September 3rd, Jack was sentenced to life in prison. However, after the trial, public opinion began to shift, and many people started to question Jack's guilt. As more details about his confession and his background emerged in the media, people began to wonder whether he was truly capable of committing such a heinous crime. Those who knew Jack found it hard to believe that he was capable of the crime. He was a passive, timid, and compliant person who would agree to anything if pushed hard enough. In the past, he had even taken the blame for something he didn't do, like the time he claimed responsibility for breaking a boiler at a charity center, when in fact someone else was to blame. This behavior raised doubts about his ability to make a genuine confession to the crime. His supporters felt that the police must have manipulated him into confessing by feeding him information and asking pressured questions. For instance, if the police asked him if he hit the victim with a piece of wood, and he answered yes, they could use that as a confession. However, this approach can be unreliable, especially considering Jack's tendency to confess to anything when under threat. Even the mention of the electric chair was enough to make him agree to whatever the detectives wanted. Furthermore, the police took Jack to the crime scene at the same time as the witnesses, a married couple who later identified him at the police station. This raised concerns that the witnesses had been biased, as they had already seen Jack and knew he was a suspect, despite the police's claims that they never crossed paths. There were several red flags surrounding Jack's alleged involvement in the crime. For instance, the police failed to locate the bus driver or any passengers who claimed to have seen Jack on his way to the city center, which contradicted his own statement. Moreover, multiple people at the charity organization building where Jack lived and worked said to have seen him at around 1:30 p.m. This created a major timing issue. Even if Jack had left immediately after being seen by these witnesses, the bus ride to the shopping center on the outskirts of town would have taken at least 40 minutes. Given the crime was committed at 1:50 p.m., it was logistically impossible for Jack to have made it on time. This cast serious doubts about Jack's guilt and raised suspicions that the police may have coerced his confession. Christie's parents, too, began questioning whether Jack was the true culprit. At the height of the controversy, approximately 70 individuals gathered in front of City Hall on September 9th to draw attention to the case and advocate for a comprehensive investigation. They established a public committee aimed at securing justice for Jack. As a result, Jack was assigned a new lawyer, who swiftly petitioned for a case review. After several months, a judge dismissed Jack's original confession and ordered a new trial, putting the onus on the prosecution to establish his guilt from the beginning. This marked a daunting challenge for the prosecution, making their case almost unviable. Norman Mills, Christie's father, began his own investigation while preparations for the new trial were underway. Dissatisfied with the way the detectives had worked, Norman took matters into his own hands. Immediately after the murder, Norman and several neighbors searched the area where Christie was found. They discovered a bloody pair of jean shorts and men's underwear in the woods. They turned the items over to the police, who had initially missed them. It was unclear whether these items were related to the case or if they had been examined for evidence. Jack's new trial began in 1977, 2 years after the murder. The defense had two tasks: first and foremost, to prove Jack's innocence and also to try to identify the real killer. In fact, they already had a pretty strong candidate for the role, who they considered to be the prime suspect. The man who found Christ's body along with his wife was Henry Newell, who was 25 years old at the time of the murder. At the beginning of the trial, Jack's lawyers had amassed an impressive list of reasons to suspect Henry of murder, and during the trial, the list grew even longer. Initially, Henry attracted attention because of his criminal record. Beginning in his teenage years, he had been arrested multiple times for various crimes, serving 3 prison sentences. He had successfully escaped from prison twice before being captured and brought back. At the time of Jack's trial, he was serving his 4th sentence, this time for burning down a house to collect insurance money. Lawyers also reviewed evidence from Christ's case and found some very suspicious details in his testimony. Henry said he had found her body, ran over, and threw a bloody piece of wood aside. He explained this by saying that he was in a state of shock at the time. But acting like that still seemed odd. Why did he pick up the murder weapon and throw it from his body for no apparent reason? He also testified that he thought the girl was still alive, so he took off his shirt and pressed it to her face. This action also raised questions. Did he actually try to stop the bleeding, or was his shirt stained with blood during the murder, and he needed to justify it somehow? Jack's lawyer found a store clerk in the mall where Henry had run to call the police. She said he was not wearing a shirt but was wearing jean shorts, although by the time police arrived, he was wearing a different pair of pants. The employee also confirmed that Henry had a new bruise on his face, as if someone had hit him. When asked why she didn't immediately report this to the police, she said no one had asked her. The officers themselves should have noticed this bruising but ignored it. Henry also agreed to take a polygraph test, but he ended up vomiting right on the machine. Another witness was Henry's neighbor, who said that on the night of the murder, he had talked to Henry and noticed many new scratches on his hands. The man also mentioned seeing a telephone cord in Henry's garage that was the same color and shape as the cord used to tie the victim's hands. That's not all. The neighbor said that Henry had once told him a very strange story. He claimed to know Christ's 14-year-old friend Carol and that they had once swum naked together in the pool. This story shocked everyone involved in the case. It turned out that Henry was acquainted with Carol, who was also directly involved in the case. His wife, Pam, also testified in court, saying everything had happened exactly as they told police on the first day. They had gone to the mall, and their son wanted to go for a walk. They went into the woods and found the body. Pam added that up until that point, Henry had remained at home and only stepped outside for a few minutes to scare away neighborhood children who had begun throwing firecrackers into their yard. Carol also testified, saying she had never met Henry. She was also asked about her intentions in telling Christ's mother that things should not have escalated to this point, but Carol again claimed she did not remember saying anything like that. Henry himself repeated his story without any changes and insisted that he had nothing to do with the crime. One of the most important moments of the trial was the showing of the entire recording of Jack's interrogation. After watching it, it became clear to everyone that Jack had simply been forced to confirm the detective's words that he had committed murder. Jack barely said anything and didn't seem to fully understand what the police wanted from him. But that was not the most important moment of the trial. On the fifth day, another unexpected witness appeared. It was Bobby, Henry's stepson, and his testimony truly shocked everyone following the case. Bobby revealed that that day, Henry had indeed gone out of the house to chase away the children who had thrown firecrackers into the yard. When Henry returned home, his shirt and sandals were missing, and Henry had scars on his hands and face. Bobby was told by his parents that they would be going to the shopping center, but when they arrived, they instead took him on a walk in the woods behind the center. Bobby claims he never asked to go for a walk, which contradicts what his parents initially said. During the walk, they found Henry's torn sandal and then Christie's body. Bobby's mother instructed him not to tell anyone about what he saw. At the trial, Bobby's grandmother testified about a disturbing comment made by Henry during Christie's farewell ceremony. After expressing her sadness about Christie's death, Henry replied, "It will teach her to keep her mouth shut." Another witness, Henry's friend, came forward and said that Henry had confessed to him that he accidentally killed Christie. Although the evidence clearly pointed to Henry's involvement, the prosecutor surprisingly announced that they would not pursue a case against Henry. The prosecutor also claimed that the initial investigation was handled correctly, despite acknowledging that the police missed or ignored many clues from the beginning. The public was outraged by this decision, leading the prosecutor to change his mind 2 days later and agree to reopen the investigation into Christie's death. Christie's father refused to give up on seeking justice and filed a civil lawsuit against Jack, but not because he believed Jack was involved in the murder. Rather, he hoped to gain access to the case files and gather more information. Unfortunately, this effort also proved unsuccessful. The case had remained stagnant until 2013, when Henry died of terminal cancer. Despite this, in the same year, former attorney John Aller became interested in the case and conducted his own investigation. He contacted all parties involved in gathering new information. Christie's relatives had provided John with a box of records that Christie's father had collected. After reviewing the records and talking to dozens of people, John believed that Henry was the culprit behind Christie's murder. John's investigation revealed that Carol had bought marijuana from Henry, which made him suspect that Henry was involved in the crime. This new discovery created a possible connection between Henry and Carol, which could explain why Carol brought Christie to the forest. One theory is that Carol planned to meet Henry in the forest to buy an illegal substance. It's possible that Carol invited Christie along, using the DJ story as a cover. A more sinister explanation suggests that Carol brought Christie to the forest at Henry's request, intending for him to harm her. However, Christie resisted, as evidenced by Henry's injuries, and he ultimately killed her. When John took over the case, Henry had passed away from cancer at the age of 63. However, John continued his work and released a book about Christie's murder. The release of the book sparked a new wave of interest, and Christie's relatives demanded that the investigation be reopened. Some of Henry's relatives also confirmed that Henry was the one who killed the girl. This led to the reopening of the murder investigation in May 2014. Detectives re-examined the evidence, interviewed dozens of people, and reassessed Henry's confession. They re-examined Christie's clothes and found traces of semen, but they were too small for DNA analysis. The investigation lasted until late 2015, when detectives announced that Henry was the one who had committed the crime. But because he had passed away, the case could not go to court. The investigation ended with the conclusion that Henry had left home, gone to the road behind the shopping center, seen Christie alone, and decided to assault her with a telephone cord, taking her deep into the woods. Henry had attacked Christie, injuring her. Then he killed her with a piece of wood. Returning home, Henry recounted the incident to his wife, and the two began to make plans to avoid punishment. For many years afterward, Carol never revealed the truth. Police later apologized to Christie's family for their careless handling of the incident. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ollie Kemp. Alexandra Ollie Elizabeth Kemp was born October 11, 1982, in Leawood. She was the oldest of 3 children and the only daughter of her parents. After graduating high school with honors, Alexandra enrolled at Kansas State University. Following her freshman year, she returned to her hometown of Leawood for summer break. During her break, Alexandra took a part-time job at a local outdoor swimming pool near her parents' house, where her younger brother Tyler already worked. The pool was a quiet neighborhood spot, catering mainly to local residents, and it still operates today. On June 18, 2002, Alexandra reported to work on an overcast day because resulted in fewer visitors than usual. At 5 p.m., Tyler arrived at the pool to start his shift, but his sister Alexandra was nowhere to be found. Her phone and purse were still on the table where she usually sat, which made Tyler confused and worried. He immediately called his parents to report that Alexandra had vanished. Their father, Roger Kemp, rushed to the scene and began searching for his daughter. He first checked the pool, but it was empty. Next, he went to the small pump room near the pool, which contained equipment for water purification, a ladder, and other items. Upon entering the pump room, Roger didn't see anything out of the ordinary at first. However, he soon noticed a leg protruding from under a tarp. As he lifted the tarp, he was met with a horrific sight: his daughter Alexandra, brutally beaten and naked from the waist down, with multiple bruises on her face and body. Roger quickly called 911 and spoke with the operator. When the ambulance arrived, Roger was performing CPR on his daughter. The paramedics took Alexandra to the hospital, but despite their best efforts, she sadly did not survive. Alexandra was declared dead shortly after arrival at the hospital. An examination revealed that the cause of death was strangulation, despite the presence of multiple severe injuries. A thorough investigation found no evidence of forced intimacy, although her body was partially unclothed. The police collected DNA samples from Alexandra's body and secured the pool area, searching for clues to identify the perpetrator. Evidence of a struggle was evident in the room where Roger discovered Alexandra's body, including her flip-flops found in separate locations. Additionally, an open bottle of antiseptic gel and its cap were found at the scene. A few days later, while the police continued to investigate, Alexandra's family and hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects at a funeral ceremony. Phil Howes, Alexandra's boyfriend since high school, was initially suspected in her death. As a pool administrator, he worked the morning shift on the day of her death, and Alexandra arrived at noon to start her 5-hour shift. Although Phil often stayed after work to spend time with Alexandra, he left promptly after his shift that day because they had plans for the evening. Despite being an early suspect, Phil had a solid alibi and was quickly cleared by the police. In an interview with detectives, Phil mentioned that Alexandra often felt uncomfortable being alone at work because some of the lawn maintenance workers would stare at her and try to flirt. The police investigated the lawn workers, but each of them had an alibi. However, the inquiry wasn't entirely fruitless. Several workers reported seeing a suspicious man with a video camera lurking in the bushes near the pool the day before Alexandra's death, apparently watching the female lifeguards in swimsuits. The police were given conflicting reports about Alexandra's final hours. Some people said she left the scene in an old Ford pickup truck, while others mentioned different circumstances. A study of Alexandra's mobile phone activity revealed that she had made plans with a friend, Laurel, to meet on the day she died. However, Alexandra didn't show up. When Laurel went to the police station to give her account of events, she explained that Alexandra had asked her to come to the pool to keep her company until her shift ended. According to Laurel, the pool was empty that day due to the poor weather, which made Alexandra anxious. When Laurel arrived at the pool at around 2:30 p.m., she didn't see Alexandra anywhere. Instead, a man she didn't know emerged from the pool house and waved at her with a smile. Laurel thought this man might be Alexandra's boss, and she decided to leave so as not to get her friend in trouble for socializing during work hours. At the time, she had no reason to think that anything was amiss. The police investigation led them away from Alexandra's workplace and to a completely different suspect. As a witness, Laurel provided a detailed description of the person she believed committed the crime. The police used this description to create a sketch of the suspect, who was identified as a white man around 30 years old, with a stocky build, short brown hair, and driving a 1980 Ford pickup truck. The suspect's identity was narrowed down when someone recognized the description as matching James Strader, a local mechanic who owned an old Ford pickup truck. James was questioned by the police and appeared to match the sketch, but he denied any involvement in Alexandra's death. His employer verified his alibi, stating that James was at work on the day of the murder. As a result, James was released from custody. While the police had eliminated James as a suspect, forensic analysis of evidence collected from the crime scene revealed male DNA on an antiseptic gel tube and on Alexandra's body. Unfortunately, the DNA did not match anyone in the police database, leaving the case still unsolved. Alexandra's family, friends, and boyfriend were ruled out as suspects after DNA tests showed no match with the DNA samples found on her body. The investigation was driven by Alexandra's father, Roger Kemp, who was determined to find his daughter's killer. After losing his child, Roger felt like he had lost his purpose in life. However, he found a new reason to keep going, Justice for Alexandra. In an interview, Roger explained his approach: "You can either give up or keep fighting. I chose to fight." Impressed by his dedication, the police department gave Roger a workspace where he could collect and share information and collaborate with the investigators. As they explored all available leads, Roger and the investigators contacted the popular TV show America's Most Wanted and asked them to feature Alexandra's case. The show's producers agreed, and her story was aired. The episode generated hundreds of calls from viewers with potential tips. Although the authorities thoroughly investigated each lead, none of them led to a breakthrough, and the case stalled once again. In February 2003, 8 months after Alexandra's death, a promising new lead emerged. Following a thorough investigation, police in Utah apprehended a suspect. 3 separate witnesses, including 2 women and a 14-year-old girl, came forward to report being forced into intimate encounters with a man. He had managed to evade capture initially, but was eventually tracked down and arrested in Utah. The arrested individual was identified as James Strader, the same person who had been questioned by Kansas police earlier. Notably, James bore a strong physical resemblance to the suspect's composite sketch. James was questioned by the police, but they failed to collect his DNA sample at the time. This might have been because his employer had convinced the police that James was at work on the day of the crime and had not left the premises. Despite this, James denied any involvement in Alexandra Kemp's death. Although he resembled the suspect in the composite sketch, James claimed he had not been near the pool on the day of the crime. He eventually provided a DNA sample for analysis. The results indicates that his DNA did not match the DNA found on Alexandra's body or the antiseptic gel tube. James was later imprisoned for unrelated charges, and the investigation into Alexandra Kemp's death hit a dead end once again. A year after Alexandra's death, the police still had no leads. Roger Kemp, Alexandra's father, and Phil House, her boyfriend, continued to fight for justice. Phil, who was also the president of the student community, sent the composite sketch of the suspect to students at other universities via email and asked them to watch an episode of America's Most Wanted that featured Alexandra Kemp's case. A year had passed, but the police and relatives' efforts had yielded no results in the Alexandra Kemp case. Undeterred, Roger Kemp, Alexandra's father, continued his quest for justice. He reached out to the America's Most Wanted program again, requesting a rerun of the episode about Alexandra's death. The show's creators asked if there were any new developments, and although Roger replied that there were none, his determination impressed them, leading to the episode being aired again. The rerun generated a fresh wave of calls to the police, prompting Roger to offer a $25,000 reward for any information that could help identify the person responsible for his daughter's death. The city of Leawood authorities increased the reward to $50,000. Roger also distributed flyers featuring his daughter's photo, a sketch of the suspect, and details about the reward. As Roger drove along the highway, he noticed billboards and realized they could be an effective way to raise awareness about the case. He began contacting advertising agencies to inquire about the cost of posting the information on a billboard. When he called the Lamar Advertising Company, the owner refused to take his money, offering to display the information on multiple billboards for free instead. Roger decided to publicize a sketch of the suspect and reward information on billboards along a major highway. The police received hundreds of tips, which took time to investigate. Notably, multiple tips mentioned the same individual, Teddy Hoover, who owned an old Ford pickup truck and worked in pool maintenance. His appearance matched the suspect's sketch, making it unlikely to be a coincidence. The police launched a search for Teddy Hoover and found his address in Kansas. When they arrived, Teddy answered the door, appearing surprised and nervous. However, this reaction didn't necessarily imply guilt, as many people become nervous when confronted by the police. When questioned about his whereabouts on June 18, 2002, Teddy claimed he couldn't remember, which was understandable given the year time lapse. Teddy denied any involvement in maintaining the pool where Alexandra worked. Nevertheless, the detectives asked him to provide a voluntary DNA sample to rule him out as a suspect. Teddy declined, stating he needed to consult with a lawyer first. He promised to contact the police after speaking with his attorney. The next day, Teddy's lawyer reached out to the investigators, expressing his client's concerns about his DNA sample being added to a database. Teddy reportedly believed in various conspiracy theories and feared that if he cooperated with the police, they would use the information against him in other cases. In an effort to alleviate his concerns, the investigators promised not to enter his DNA into any database and only use it to compare with the DNA found on Alexandra Kemp. The lawyer agreed to speak with his client and said he would call back. As they waited for the call, the police reviewed the case materials again and stumbled upon a piece of paper in one of the folders with a name that caught their attention. On the day of Alexandra's death, detectives began questioning onlookers who had gathered by the pool, trying to determine if anyone had seen anything suspicious. Interestingly, one of the people they spoke with was Teddy Hoover, who had claimed he had never been to the crime scene before. As the investigation continued, detectives grew increasingly confident that Teddy Hoover might be the man they had been searching for over the past 2 years. After several days, investigators contacted Teddy's lawyer to ask if his client was willing to provide a DNA sample. However, the lawyer responded by stating that his client had refused his services and broken off contact. Police immediately went to Teddy's house, but he had already escaped. As a result, the 29-year-old suspect was placed on the National Wanted list. Despite the efforts of the detectives, Teddy managed to evade capture for months. Billboards featuring his image were still up, but the search had yielded nothing. It wasn't until September 2004, when an anonymous caller contacted the police, that a new lead emerged. According to the caller, he knew the name of Teddy's girlfriend, with whom Teddy was living in Kansas. Detectives sought to locate Laura Barr, a woman connected to Teddy Hoover, but discovered she had left the state at the same time he escaped. This led them to investigate further. The U.S. Postal Service informed the Kansas State Police that Laura was receiving mail in Litchfield, Connecticut, along with a man named Benjamin Appleby, at the same address. The house where they resided was secluded and located in a rural area. Authorities suspected that Benjamin Appleby might be an alias for Teddy Hoover. To aid in the investigation, detectives from Leawood contacted the Connecticut State Police, requesting their assistance in locating Benjamin. It was discovered that he had a prior record in Connecticut, with an outstanding arrest warrant stemming from a 1997 incident where he had exposed himself to a schoolgirl. However, Benjamin had evaded capture and fled the state. With the existing warrant, detectives proceeded to the address associated with Benjamin's mail. Upon arrival, they found him at home and immediately took him into custody. As suspected, Benjamin Appleby was confirmed to be Teddy Hoover. It was revealed that while detectives in Kansas had been seeking a DNA sample from Teddy in connection with Alexandra Kemp's death, he had returned to Connecticut and resumed using his real name, attempting to maintain a low profile and escape notice. To apprehend Benjamin, detectives from Leawood traveled to Connecticut, anticipating that he would once again claim innocence. Before bringing him in for questioning, they devised a plan to unsettle him. They filled the interrogation room with crime scene photos and pictures of Alexandra, and placed folders with his name on the table, creating the illusion that the investigation had substantial evidence against him. When Benjamin entered the interrogation room, he was visibly shaken and unable to speak. A detective confronted him, inquiring about the implications of obtaining his DNA sample. Shortly after, Benjamin broke down in tears, confessing to Alexandra's death. He then recounted the events of the fateful June day, explaining that he had noticed Alexandra, found her attractive, and attempted to flirt with her. When she entered the pump room, he followed her, locked the door, and trapped her inside. When Benjamin touched she fought back, leaving him feeling humiliated. In a fit of anger, he attacked her, beating and strangling her until she lost consciousness. Benjamin then attempted to take advantage of her body, undressing her partially. He retrieved a tube of antiseptic gel from a first aid kit, intending to use it as a lubricant. However, just as he was about to proceed, the sound of a car horn distracted him. The victim's friend, who was waiting in a car behind a fence, had noticed something was amiss and sounded the horn. Fearing he would be caught, Benjamin hastily covered the body and fled the scene. Later, Benjamin returned to the area, where he encountered Alexandra's friend, whom he greeted with a smile and a wave, trying to appear nonchalant. He then got into his pickup truck and drove away. Hours later, Benjamin returned to the crime scene again, this time blending in with the crowd of onlookers gathered near the pool. The DNA evidence ultimately led to Benjamin's downfall. Tests revealed that the DNA found on the tube of antiseptic gel and on Alexandra's body matched Benjamin's. Thanks in large part to the efforts of investigator Roger Kemp, the police were finally able to identify the man responsible for Alexandra's murder, more than 2 years after the crime was committed. Benjamin Appleby claimed he initially wanted to plead guilty to avoid putting Alexandra's family through further emotional distress. However, at his first court hearing, he suddenly declared his innocence, stating that his confession was made under duress. Despite this, DNA analysis revealed that his DNA was the only sample found on the victim's body, making it difficult to dispute his involvement. Benjamin's lawyers attempted to argue that their client did not intentionally take Alexandra's life, admitting that he was responsible for her death but claiming it was not premeditated. However, forensic experts pointed out that Benjamin had strangled Alexandra for approximately 10 minutes, during which time he could have stopped but chose not to. The prosecution argued that Benjamin's sole intention was to observe Alexandra. On the day of the incident, June 18, 2002, the pool area was empty due to cloudy weather, allowing Benjamin to take advantage of the situation. He was found guilty by a jury in December 2005 and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 50 years, as well as an additional 19 years for attempting to force Alexandra into intimacy. In 2019, Benjamin appealed the decision, but the court upheld the life imprisonment sentence for first-degree murder. The Court of Appeal also ruled that the attempt to force Alexandra into intimacy was already taken into account during the initial sentencing. Benjamin was sentenced twice for the same crime, prompting the court to overturn the second conviction. However, even if Benjamin is released on parole, he will be 81 years old by that time. The authorities involved in the case credit Roger Kemp's persistence for helping them catch the culprit. While Benjamin was in prison, Roger and his wife established a self-defense program for girls, teaching thousands of girls and women across the country basic self-defense techniques. Roger Kemp's tireless efforts to bring attention to the case and his work in creating a safe community did not go unnoticed. He was awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal by Barack Obama at the White House. Until his passing at 77 on March 1, 2022, Roger continued to work for the foundation he established in his daughter's name. His ultimate goal was to make a difference in at least one person's life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Tina Watson. Tina Watson was born in West Germany on February 13, 1977. She was adopted by Tommy and Cindy Thomas on January 24, 1980. Tina met her future husband, Gabe Watson, while attending the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and they started dating in January 2001. Tina was diagnosed with a heart condition called paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT. Despite this, she took diving lessons in January 2003 and earned her certification before marrying Gabe on October 11, 2003. At the time of their wedding, Gabe was a qualified rescue diver with 55 dives under his belt, while Tina had only dived 5 times. As Tina and Gabe's wedding day approached, Tina's anxiety grew. At 26 years old, she had already experienced 2 failed relationships and was now attempting marriage for the second time. Her first relationship with Scott McCulloch ended due to her mother's disapproval. Although her mother didn't have specific reasons, she wanted a better life for Tina and felt she was rushing into marriage. Tina and Scott eventually parted ways. Her second relationship with Stan Marks also failed, but this time, her parents weren't involved. They simply couldn't overcome their differences and mutually decided to end the relationship. It wasn't until Christmas Eve, at a party with friends, that Tina met Gabe Watson. Their relationship wasn't sparked by love at first sight but rather by mutual support after recent breakups. 2 years into their relationship, Gabe proposed to Tina. Having learned from past experiences, Tina agreed, but only if she had her parents' blessing. In 2003, Gabe decided to ask Tina's parents for their blessing in a romantic gesture, choosing Valentine's Day. However, since Tina's father was away, the dinner was rescheduled for February 15th. During the dinner, Gabe announced his decision to spend the rest of his life with Tina. Tina's father, Tommy, responded with a straightforward question, "Do you love Tina?" However, instead of answering, Watson stuttered and remained silent. His father dismissed this reaction as mere awkwardness. Tommy then posed the same question to Tina, but she also avoided a direct answer. Instead, she expressed her fear of being alone at 26 years old. After considering their responses, Tommy gave his blessing to the young couple. The wedding preparations were well underway, with Tina preoccupied with her attire, guest list, and other details. Meanwhile, Watson was solely focused on planning their honeymoon. He had already decided on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, where he intended to go diving. There isn't any consulting Tina about her preferences. To explore the sunken ship, Townsville Titanic, which sank in 1911, Gabe wanted Tina to learn scuba diving. However, Tina wasn't interested in diving, unlike Gabe, who was an experienced scuba diver with 55 dives under his belt. He had even completed a rescue diving course. Gabe would occasionally take Tina scuba diving in a pool with calm water and lifeguard supervision, but that was the extent of her experience. Gabe gave Tina an ultimatum: if she didn't learn to dive by their honeymoon, she would have to stay home while he went on his adventures. Gabe took out a loan to buy Tina her own diving equipment and pay for her lessons. However, Tina's first instructor was unimpressed with her skills and warned Gabe that she wasn't suited for open ocean diving. Gabe was furious and refused to listen, accusing the instructor of being a poor teacher and discontinuing the classes. The second instructor promptly gave Tina a passing grade, but also made a comment that she only made an effort to impress her future husband. Tina and Gabe got married on October 11th, and 2 days later, they embarked on a trip to Australia, which was funded by their wedding gifts totaling $10,000. During their honeymoon, Gabe dedicated some time to making Tina happy. They explored Sydney, visited the Sydney Aquarium, and went to the zoo. Although Tina was initially excited, her mood changed as they approached their visit to the Great Barrier Reef. On October 21st, they traveled to Townsville and boarded a boat in the evening, heading to a renowned destination popular among divers. However, employees at the diving company later reported that Tina and Gabe appeared inexperienced with diving equipment. Despite Gabe having completed diving courses and having some experience, he seemed uncertain about the equipment, handling it as if it were his first time. Before diving, Gabe assisted Tina in passing the required exam, which typically should be conducted individually. When the instructor offered Tina assistance underwater, she declined. The dive log noted a strong current that day, a crucial detail in the events that unfolded. As they prepared for the dive, Gabe helped Tina with the equipment they had purchased in the US. He rented an 11-liter tank for himself but chose an 8.5-liter tank for Tina, a volume considered small and potentially hazardous given her limited experience. Initially, the dive to the Townsville Titanic wreck was not possible. Tina needed an additional air tank, which stopped her from reaching the required depth. Furthermore, Gabe's underwater computer was not working. The computer calculates the needed diving and ascent speeds and shows the oxygen levels in the cylinders. After returning to the boat and resolving the computer issue, they attempted the dive again. The wreck was located 49 feet below the surface, and Tina was the first to descend, with Gabe following closely behind. According to Gabe's account, everything seemed normal at first. However, at some point, Tina stopped, began waving at him, and then signaled that she wanted to ascend. Gabe immediately recognized that she was panicking, which was not an uncommon occurrence for her. As they were already halfway to the surface, Gabe decided to calm Tina down and maintain their current depth for a while, rather than continuing the dive, allowing her to psychologically adjust to the pressure. Gabe said that Tina had been breathing deeply, which had not been safe, and Gabe had seen that Tina was starting to sink. Gabe had attempted to grab her belt to keep her afloat, but Tina had swung her arm forcefully, knocking his mask off. As Gabe had quickly put his mask back on, Tina had drifted further away. Gabe had tried swimming towards her but had been unable to reach her. Gabe had then made the decision to return to the surface to seek help from the lifeguards. During his ascent, Gabe had met 2 other swimmers, but despite his attempts to signal for help, the swimmer had ignored him. It's worth noting that there were 2 Asian men in the vicinity, but neither corroborated Gabe's account of seeking help. Subsequent police analysis of underwater computer readings revealed that Gabe had indeed attempted to swim after his wife for a short while before giving up. However, his ascent to the surface was controlled, as he stopped at each designated depth level as instructed. Other divers at the scene claimed that Gabe had sufficient opportunity to rescue his wife, but failed to act. The incident occurred early in the dive, and Gabe had enough oxygen to swim to the bottom and back to the surface. Rescuers on the ship responded quickly, locating Tina's body at a depth of 82 feet. Despite their efforts, including 40 minutes of artificial respiration on the deck, Tina was pronounced dead. Witnesses reported that Gabe kept his distance from his wife's body, appearing indifferent to the situation, and even exhibiting carefree behavior such as smiling with other passengers on the way to shore, which he later denied in court. The autopsy results for Tina revealed some inconsistencies. Although there were no obvious signs of a violent death, there were bruises on her neck and blood in her nostrils. However, these findings are not unusual given the 82-foot depth at which her body was discovered. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol in her system, but high levels of ibuprofen and paracetamol, which are commonly used to treat seasickness. A small amount of fluid was found in her lungs. The official cause of death was listed as drowning, but it is possible that she was already oxygen deprived before succumbing to drowning. Tina's diving gear was inspected by the Australian Water Police, but no issues were found. Initially, the police could have dismissed the incident as an accident caused by an inexperienced diver neglecting safety protocols, a sadly common occurrence. However, there were some suspicious aspects to the case, such as the inconclusive autopsy results. Additionally, Watson's unusual behavior, as reported by the diving team, didn't align with the expected actions of a grieving husband. These inconsistencies made it difficult to close the case, leading to a prolonged investigation. Gabe began to suspect that the detectives were investigating him. Furthermore, Tina's parents refused to accept the incident as a tragic accident and sought to hold their son-in-law accountable either for their daughter's death or for failing to assist her. The police observed that the suspect, Gabe, was in a state of shock. He displayed erratic behavior, crying and laughing uncontrollably, and twitching nervously. Gabe requested to call his father and complained of ear pain. He also begged his father to inform his wife's parents about the tragic event. Later that night, Gabe was released from police custody. He proceeded to the yacht owned by the company that had organized the diving trip to the reef. Gabe asked the company for a place to stay for the night, citing that the trip was initially supposed to last 2 days but was cut short due to his wife's death. He also requested a partial refund for the dive, as he never got to see the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother arrived in Townsville to support her son and help him find a lawyer. At Gabe's request, they visited the morgue, where he wanted to see his wife one last time. Although Gabe was still considered a suspect, his actions were those of a grieving husband. He cried, held his wife's hand, and begged for her forgiveness, unaware that a police officer was standing outside, recording his actions on a tape recorder. Detective Lawrence questioned Gabe in court about his earlier statement next to Tina at the morgue, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Lawrence sought clarification on what Gabe meant by it. Gabe had been traveling home with his wife's body and had a layover in Oakland. During this time, he sought medical attention for a sore ear and was held for evaluation at the airport. The investigation suggested that Gabe did this to avoid meeting Tina's father. However, it was revealed that ear problems are common among divers, which may have explained Gabe's condition. At Tina's funeral on November 5th, Gabe met with his father-in-law, Watson. In a visible gesture, Gabe removed his wife's wedding ring and placed it on his finger, covering his own ring. He also removed her earrings and handed them to Watson. After this encounter, the Thomas family did not interact with Gabe again that day. Later in the trial, Gabe was questioned about removing his wife's jewelry during her funeral. He simply smiled and shrugged, seemingly unwilling to confirm or deny it. Those who knew Gabe had mixed opinions about his character. Some found him to be kind and amusing, while others considered him cruel and controlling. However, they all agreed that Gabe and his wife, Tina, appeared unhappy together. Tina's friends corroborated what she had shared with her father at a family dinner on February 15th, that she had married Gabe out of fear of being alone and that this decision ultimately led to her demise. Furthermore, one of Tina's friends revealed that Tina had confided in her about being taken to an insurance company by Gabe, where she was forced to purchase a life insurance policy at an inflated rate, naming Gabe as the beneficiary. This account was verified by the insurance agent, who confirmed the details. The cab driver who drove Gabe and Tina to their yacht also testified that Tina had cried throughout the ride, while Gabe ignored her. Another friend of Tina's, Amanda Phillips, came forward with a disturbing story that shed more light on the true nature of Gabe and Tina's relationship. It was revealed that Gabe had secretly recorded Tina using the bathroom, edited the footage, and incorporated it into a Christmas celebration video. That would have been acceptable, but he chose to do it in front of a full house of guests during a general viewing. As everyone tried to explain to him that his actions were in poor taste, he laughed loudly while they gestured in frustration, tapping their fingers against their temples. Although removing jewelry during a funeral may seem like a shocking and condemnatory act by Gabe, a more disturbing incident occurred in 2008. During the trial, the jury was shown footage of Watson visiting Tina's grave, taking all the flowers, and carrying them away. The flowers were later found in a nearby trash can. Tina's father had noticed the missing flowers and set up a hidden camera among the monuments to catch the thief. However, he was shocked to see Gabe on the tape and was outraged by his actions. In court, Gabe claimed that he and his wife had discussed their own death on an extreme honeymoon and that she had requested no flowers on her grave. This excuse sounded strange and unlikely. Gabe claimed that Tina drowned while he attempted to put a mask on her face underwater. However, it was later revealed that this was impossible without an additional air source, which in this case was Tina's oxygen supply. In November 2008, Australian authorities arrested Gabe. His trial began on June 5, 2009, where he pleaded guilty to failing to save his wife. As a result, he was charged with negligent homicide and sentenced to 18 months in prison. Upon completing his sentence, Gabe returned to the U.S. However, a year later, he was charged with first-degree murder by a U.S. court. The prosecution alleged that his motive was to collect insurance payouts following his wife's death. Gabe's lawyer defended him by shifting the blame onto the diving company, claiming that its employees had failed to ensure tourist safety and were now afraid of losing their business due to potential license revocation. Regarding the insurance payout, Gabe received $33,000. However, he spent significantly more on lawyers and additional expert analysis. Despite this, the prosecution maintained that Gabe's expenditure was an attempt to avoid suspicion, as he could not assume he would be believed. The prosecutor also disputed the fact that Gabe, who had a degree in drowning rescue, was unable to save his wife. Gabe addressed the jury, reflecting on the past 7 years since the tragedy. He expressed that he has thought about that terrible day every day, and the public has blamed him, calling him a murderer. Gabe noted that nobody has shown him understanding or empathy, except for his late wife's parents, who he understands will never forgive him. Gabe acknowledged that he can be accused of not doing enough to save his wife, Tina, but he believes he has already been punished for that. He stated that he was afraid to die and wanted to live, which is why he didn't drown with his wife 7 years ago. Gabe emphasized that he still wants to live now. The court found no evidence of Gabe's guilt, and the jury declared him not guilty. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaler family. James Craig Kaler was born in 1963 in Weatherford, Texas. Karen Kaler White, his future wife, was born in the same city 2 years later, in 1965. They met while attending a Texas university in the early 1980s. At the time, Craig was a graduating engineering student, and Karen was a freshman studying humanities. They quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. Young and in love, they appeared to be the ideal couple, with Craig standing out as a top student due to his exceptional determination and engineering talent. After graduating in the late 1980s, they had a modest wedding with only close friends and family in attendance. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, and their second child, Lauren, in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle by local standards. In 1999, while Karen was pregnant with their third child, Craig received a lucrative job offer from a large utility company in Weatherford. His promotion coincided with the birth of their son, Sean, whom he cherished. Craig purchased a large house in a highly respected neighborhood in the city, along with a dependable car for his family. He became the main provider for the family, while Karen stayed at home. On the surface, the family appeared to be flawless. Their daughters, Emily and Lauren, were gifted in sports and music, frequently taking part in singing competitions and local activities. Emily was an outstanding student who went on to attend the prestigious pharmacy college, whereas Lauren, also an excellent student, aspired to enroll in a conservatory to pursue a music career. Their son, Sean, was a friendly, curious boy with a passion for mathematics and a dream of becoming an archaeologist. He had a close relationship with his parents and sisters. Craig supported the family financially, while Karen ensured the home was welcoming, took care of the children, and enjoyed baking. They was actively involved in community work, aiming to enhance their neighborhood, and had raised 3 gifted and wonderful children. However, despite their seemingly perfect life, the family was hiding numerous issues. In 2007, Karen confided in her younger sister, Linda, revealing that she was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Karen expressed her distress over Craig's controlling behavior, which had been ongoing for years and was escalating. Craig insisted on a detailed record of every single expense, no matter how small, including daily household costs. Karen had to provide him with receipts from the supermarket, bank statements, and even report her daily activities while he was at work. The entire family was bound to a strict schedule set by Craig, dictating when they had to be home, sleep, wake up, eat, and even when they could be intimate. As time passed, Craig's need for control grew stronger. He became increasingly demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move down to the hour. Karen felt trapped, with no personal time, only duties and responsibilities. She tried to meet all of Craig's demands, hoping he would eventually ease up and they could return to their previous life. However, Craig seemed to take pleasure in his control and showed no willingness to change. Linda was deeply disturbed by what her sister shared, having, like everyone else, perceived Craig as the ideal husband and family man, only to discover he was a tyrant at home. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family and was financially dependent on Craig, along with their children. So, she decided to look for a job that could provide a stable income. Karen, a mother of 3, had maintained a remarkable physical shape despite her advanced age. She prioritized good nutrition, occasional dieting, self-care, and daily jogging. Unbeknownst to her husband Craig, Karen joined a local fitness club, where she spent several hours each day working out. This newfound hobby allowed her to relieve stress, find distraction, and clarify her thoughts. As Craig was at work, he remained unaware of her fitness routine. The fitness club management soon took notice of Karen, an attractive, fit, and dedicated individual. They offered her a trial opportunity to become a fitness instructor with the potential for a formal employment contract. Karen, a former stay-at-home wife, was thrilled by this unexpected chance to turn her passion into a paid career. When Craig eventually discovered Karen's secret, she anticipated a negative reaction, guessing him to prohibit her from continuing. However, he responded calmly and seemed pleased that his wife had found a fulfilling activity that also earned her an income. Karen's husband had 3 conditions for their new arrangement. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and maintain their intimate life. Karen agreed, as this gave her the freedom to manage her daily life and finances without needing to justify every expense to her husband. At the fitness club where she worked, Karen met Sunny Reese, a new instructor. They quickly became friends, and for Karen, who had been a stay-at-home mom for years, Sunny became a trusted confidant. As their friendship grew, Karen and Sunny spent more time together, going for walks, drinking coffee, and having in-depth conversations. Their friendship eventually evolved into something more, but they kept their relationship a secret. Karen knew she had to confess to her husband but struggled to find the right words and worried about the consequences. After months of preparation, she finally opened up to Craig. Although Craig was initially perplexed by his wife's confession, he remained calm and composed. The next day, he revealed that he was open to his wife's relationship with Sunny, but only if he could be a part of it. This proposal left Karen stunned and unsure of how to respond. Craig, however, took the lead and started wooing Sunny, showering her with flowers and small gifts. To him, this seemed like a chance to spice up his intimate life and bring passion back into his marriage to Karen. Initially, the 2 women agreed to Craig's proposal, but it didn't take long for them to realize that he was trying to assert his dominance. Their unusual love triangle was short-lived, and Craig was eventually told that he was no longer welcome in their relationship. Feeling offended, Craig ordered Karen to end the affair immediately, but she continued to see Sunny, having genuinely fallen in love. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, it appeared that Karen was willing to leave her husband for a new relationship. Craig relocated his family to Columbia, Missouri. He became the water director, hoping the move would end his wife's affair with Sunny and restore normal family life. The 2008 move proved challenging. The children adapted to new schools and made friends, while Craig thought he'd severed ties between Karen and Sunny. However, Karen and Sonny continued to secretly communicate through phone calls, texts, and meetings. Karen and Sonny would meet halfway at a roadside hotel, spending a couple of hours together before returning home. By this time, Karen was aware her marriage was failing. She no longer loved her husband, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These secret meetings continued until December 2008. On New Year's Eve, the Kaler family visited their hometown to see family and friends. Sonny was also at the party. Initially, Karen and Sonny kept a low profile, just exchanging greetings. However, as the party went on and they drank more, they became less concerned about what others thought. They were inseparable, holding hands, exchanging romantic glances, and were even seen kissing by some guests. Craig was furious, feeling insulted and humiliated by Karen's public display of her affair in front of dozens of friends, former roommates, and co-workers. He verbally attacked Karen and Sonny at the party, then forcibly dragged Karen away. On the way home, Craig lost control, grabbing Karen by the shoulders and shaking her violently, ripping her dress. He then slapped her, causing her to stumble and fall, hitting her head hard. Harassment continued after they returned home, and the conflict didn't subside. Karen told Craig a few days later that she was leaving him and started divorce proceedings, asking for custody of the children. Initially, Craig apologized and begged her to stay for the children's sake, suggesting they give their marriage another try. However, Karen was resolute and got a divorce. Craig then called their mutual friends and relatives, asking them to persuade Karen to stay with him and not break up the family. She informed him that she was ending their marriage to be with Sonny, admitting that she had never found true happiness with him. In early spring 2009, Craig and Karen got into another argument while still living together. This time, Craig became physically violent, prompting Karen to report him to the police, resulting in his arrest. However, Craig downplayed the incident at the police station, claiming he only restrained Karen to calm her down, which caused her bruises. Following this incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for their divorce to be finalized. Craig was devastated and angry, especially when he found out his daughters, Emily and Lauren, sided with their mother, saying they had finally seen her happy after a long time. Craig felt betrayed and refused to communicate with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Meanwhile, Craig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His jealousy led him to try to control her, following her everywhere, watching her house, and even attempting to install a hidden camera. His obsessive behavior negatively impacted his job performance, resulting in him eventually missing work without a valid reason, which ultimately led to him being fired. After losing his job and income, Craig was forced to move in with his parents. With plenty of free time, he began stalking his ex-wife, Karen. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit her 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in the small town of Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame Police Department received a call about a suspicious van and gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported seeing a small truck pull up to her house, and a man got out and entered the house. They heard screams and gunshots, but didn't intervene, fearing the man was armed. The man quickly left the house and drove away. When police arrived, they found a terrified 10-year-old boy, Sean Kaler, calling for help. He couldn't explain what happened, but police soon discovered a horrific scene. Inside the house, near the front door, they found Dorothy lying in a pool of blood, surprisingly alive despite 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered 44-year-old Karen's body. She had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot in the head at close range by her ex-husband, leaving her no chance of survival. Nearby, between a wall and a couch, lay the body of Karen's 18-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was found and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Upstairs, in a second-floor bedroom, Emily's younger sister Lauren was found in a pool of blood, still alive. Lauren faintly begged for her life, repeatedly stating that her father was responsible for the attack. Lauren and her great-grandmother were immediately rushed to the intensive care unit of a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite medical efforts, neither survived. Lauren died on December 1 due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage, while her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. The only person who survived, Sean, was in shock. Psychologists helped him deal with the trauma he experienced, and since he was the only one who saw what happened at his great-grandmother's house, he needed to be questioned carefully. That evening, Sean's mother was preparing dinner in the kitchen when he approached her to ask for his favorite pies. Suddenly, the back door swung open and his father, Craig, entered with a shotgun. Without a word, Craig pointed the gun at his ex-wife and shot her, then fired again at closer range. Sean was initially frozen in horror, but when his father turned to him and stared silently, he realized he had to escape. He jumped out the open back door and ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and get help. However, upon reaching the threshold, Sean heard more gunshots and, fearing for his safety, hid in a nearby outbuilding. He heard additional shots and waited in terror. Craig was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. The police received reports of a speeding truck, which helped them quickly determine the direction Craig was heading. At one point, Craig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement caught up with Craig the next morning and arrested him without resistance. In the vehicle, they found a rifle, ammunition, and medication for depression and anxiety next to the driver's seat. Craig appeared confused and frightened, admitting to being armed but stating he had no intention of using the weapons. At the police station, Craig initially confessed to his crimes and openly shared his story with the investigating officer. He explained how his wife's infidelity with Sonny and their public humiliation of him had led to his downward spiral. He shared how his efforts to save his marriage resulted in job loss and further erosion of his self-respect. Overcome with emotion, Craig expressed regret and a sense of betrayal by those closest to him, including his daughters. Craig's trial started in December 2010. His lawyer, Thomas Heaney, advised him to recant his initial confession and blame his actions on mental illness and insanity. This was Craig's only way to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Craig's mental state was severely impacted after his wife left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back into his parents' home. According to Heaney, these factors led to Craig's breakdown, causing him to commit the crime while insane and unaware of his actions. However, prior to 1995, a law in Kansas allowed for leniency if a defendant pleaded insanity, but this law was repealed. The prosecution found no evidence of insanity in Craig's actions, only deliberate planning. Craig bought guns and ammunition beforehand, went to the house where his family was, shot each victim twice to ensure no chance of survival, but intentionally let his son Sean escape. In August 2011, Craig was convicted of all charges and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating he didn't want his father to die because he was his only remaining close relative. Despite numerous appeals, the verdict remained unchanged. Today, Mr. Kaler is still imprisoned, fighting to have his case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. Following the death of his mother and sisters, Sean is now an adult, having completed his education, and has chosen to stay and work in his home state. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nathan Peat. Nathan Peat was born on February 12, 1982, in Tamuning, a village on the island of Guam in the Pacific Ocean. Nathan was part of a big, loving family with 3 brothers, Matthew, Anthony, and Eric, and a sister named Carmela. His family was close-knit, with all the children being helpful and supportive of their parents. Nathan was an exemplary child who rarely got into trouble, demonstrating care and kindness at home and being diligent in his studies at school. His sociable nature made him easy to get along with, and he had many friends. Nathan grew up near the ocean and developed a passion for swimming and surfing from a young age. He spent most of his free time at the beach, soaking up the sun and enjoying life. It was during his time at South High School that he met his future wife, Michelle, and Aunt Chuck. They were immediately drawn to each other and began spending all their time together, studying, preparing for classes, and helping with household chores. As they grew closer, their friendship blossomed into romance. Tragedy struck Michelle's family when she was 16, as her mother passed away. Michelle took on a maternal role, caring for her younger sister Melissa and managing the household. Nathan was supportive and helpful throughout this difficult time, assisting with childcare and other responsibilities. After graduating in 2000, Nathan proposed to Michelle, and she happily accepted. Due to financial constraints, they decided to forego a traditional wedding and instead moved in together with the blessing of their parents to start building a life together. Nathan got a job as a receptionist at a local hotel, earning a decent income. Like many young people, he and his partner Michelle were ambitious and had big plans for their future. They wanted their own home and independence. When their son Dion was born, Nathan's income was no longer enough to cover their expenses. To provide a better life for his family, Nathan decided to join the Air Force. After completing his training, Nathan was assigned to Elmendorf Air Base in Anchorage, Alaska. Although Michelle was left to care for their baby alone, the family's financial situation improved. Eventually, they were able to build their own home, where their second child, a daughter named Niara, was born. Nathan's military career took off, and he was able to provide for his family's needs. 6 years after getting engaged, Nathan and Michelle finally had a big wedding, achieving their long-held dreams. In 2006, Nathan was transferred to the Davis-Monthan military base in Arizona, where he was promoted to lead a team responsible for loading weapons onto a 10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft. He also received training in logistics and material management. Nathan was dedicated to his job and performed it with the best intentions, truly serving his country. A coworker described Nathan as a hard worker. In 2007, Nathan and his family relocated to Nellis Air Base near Las Vegas, Nevada. There, he took on a new role as a junior officer in charge of the supply section for combat aircraft maintenance. As Nathan's career grew, so did his family. He and his wife, Michelle, had 2 more sons, Drawn and David. Because Michelle fell in love with Las Vegas, and Nathan wanted to make her happy, so he chose a house in Las Vegas that's spacious and bright, house perfect for their large family. Initially, Michelle was overjoyed with the surprise, but as time passed, their expenses began to exceed Nathan's earnings, causing their financial happiness to dwindle. Financial struggles strained Nathan and Michelle's relationship. To improve their situation, Nathan enlisted in the military, despite the U.S. being at war with Iraq. His 6-month deployment led to significant financial improvements, bringing him a sense of satisfaction. After a brief rest, Pete returned to Iraq, leaving Michelle to care for their 4 children. The weight of this responsibility, combined with Nathan's prolonged absences, took a toll on Michelle's mental health. She became anxious about being alone and struggled to cope with a reduced standard of living. To alleviate her worries, Michelle started working at a corporate credit card telemarketing firm and attended an aesthetics school to develop her skills. However, when Nathan left for Iraq again, Michelle felt isolated and disenchanted. Her relationship with Nathan was strained, and she turned to a colleague, Michael Rudolph Rodriguez, a charismatic but untrustworthy individual with a questionable past. By the end of 2009, Nathan returned home, and it seemed that the time apart had affected his family relationships. Michelle had been leading a double life, and her intentions were not entirely pure. She had developed feelings for someone else, but she didn't want to lose her husband. To keep him, she tried to please him in every way, changing her appearance and behavior. Nathan was fascinated by the changes in Michelle, but he didn't suspect that something was amiss. He was happy to be back with his family and decided to stay for a while. The children had struggled in school without their father, and Nathan was determined to make up for lost time. To earn extra money, Nathan started working night shifts in Las Vegas and also began teaching baseball to young children privately. He developed a simplified training program that was well received. However, as the family's standard of living declined, Michelle's attitude towards Nathan changed. By Thanksgiving 2010, the tension was palpable. When Nathan's brother Eric and his wife Veronica visited, they were shocked by the change in they, sensing the strain between Nathan and Michelle. It appeared that Michelle and Nathan's feelings for each other had diminished significantly. They was having trouble concealing their personal and financial struggles from others. In fact, their pantry and refrigerator were nearly bare. A conversation between Michelle and Michael occurred on December 1, 2010, in a sequence of events that seemed unusual. At 11:12 p.m., Michael sent Michelle a text message, inquiring about her well-being and mentioning that they were nearing completion of the Van Dyke contract, which was due the following day. 2 minutes later, Michael sent a follow-up message, offering Michelle a chance to take a couple of days off to rest if she was still not feeling well. He emphasized that her contributions were highly valued. Michelle responded to Michael's messages at 11:19 p.m. She mentioned that her husband had just awakened her, informing her that he would be late that day, although she was unsure about the specifics. A few months before the tragedy, Michelle was not hesitant to leave her husband Nathan. She believed that a divorce would only lead to financial struggles and emotional distress. She also doubted that Nathan would forgive her and provide sufficient alimony to support a normal life. However, Michelle was aware of Nathan's military insurance policy, which would pay out approximately $650,000 in the event of his death. This thing weighed heavily on her mind. Michelle shared her troubled thoughts with Michael, who was intrigued. They hatched a sinister plan to kill Nathan, with Michael invited Corey, a friend with a history of theft and fraud, for a $20,000 reward. Corey's girlfriend Jessica and her friend Shannon joined in, with Shannon promised a 5% profit. The original plan was to kill Nathan in a parking lot. Jessica bought supplies, including gloves and cologne. Shannon provided an alibi for Michael. However, Michelle's early return home on December 1, 2010, changed the plan. She usually arrived home around 10:40 p.m., but came home early and spent the evening with Nathan, unaware of the tragic events that would soon unfold. Nathan was running late for work, so he rushed downstairs just as Michelle was communicating with Michael. To avoid arousing suspicion, Michelle used coded messages. Unbeknownst to Nathan, Michael was parked in a black Cadillac SRX in front of the house, wearing latex gloves to prevent leaving any evidence. Michael realized that Nathan's military training made him a formidable opponent, so he decided to take him by surprise. Approaching Nathan from behind, Michael shot him 5 times in the back. He quickly escaped in his car and drove away. After the crime, Michael and Shannon went to a hotel to create an alibi. Meanwhile, Jessica thoroughly cleaned their apartment to remove any incriminating evidence. The perpetrators then disposed of their clothes by burning them in a fireplace. Later, police officers arrived at the scene and were shocked by what they found. In a neighborhood considered one of the safest, Detective Todd Williams began investigating the crime scene. He found the garage door unlocked, with a strong smell of iron inside. Blood was splattered on the walls, car, and floor. Nathan's uniform, keys, and wallet were still intact, with no valuables missing. Given the lack of missing valuables, the police ruled out robbery as a motive for the murder. Detective Laurie Anderson spoke with Michelle, the victim's wife, after examining the scene. Michelle mentioned the family's financial struggles, sparking ideas for the police. They wondered if Nathan was hiding something, such as a gambling addiction or affair, which could have motivated the attack. The evidence suggested Nathan was deliberately targeted. The police examined the victim's cell phone and found only pictures of his wife and children, which led them to believe that Pete was a decent man. The investigation continued, and the next step was to canvass the neighborhood. As some neighbors reported seeing a car parked near the pet house, driven by a man wearing a brown sweatshirt, which quickly drove away after shots were fired. This gave detectives their first lead. Nathan's family was shocked to learn of his death and immediately flew to Guam to get answers. His mother, Carmelita Pett, was devastated and cried the whole way. When they arrived at the victim's home, Michelle, Nathan's wife, threw herself into her mother-in-law's arms and then lost consciousness. However, Nathan's mother sensed that her daughter-in-law's reaction seemed unnatural and possibly fake. The investigators decided to question Michelle again and asked her about the car witnesses had seen. Unexpectedly, she mentioned that her colleague, Michael Rodriguez, had a similar car. It's unclear why Michelle revealed this information, but it helped the police piece together the puzzle. It was later determined that Michelle had inadvertently revealed the truth, or perhaps the perpetrator's plan was flawed from the start. Detectives investigated Michael's identity and discovered he had a criminal record, which raised suspicions. They brought him in for questioning, and he responded calmly. According to Michael, on the day of Nathan's murder, he went shopping at a supermarket around 9 p.m. and met a woman named Shannon. They had a long conversation and decided to continue their acquaintance in a hotel room. Michael claimed they arrived at the hotel around 11 p.m. To verify Michael's alibi, the officers contacted Shannon, who confirmed their romantic encounter. However, the detective had doubts, so they decided to examine Michelle's phone records. Specialists recovered the correspondence between Michelle and Michael, which showed they had been communicating for a year. Their conversation on the day of Nathan's murder seemed suspicious, as they discussed a contract with someone named Van DJK in a cryptic manner, suggesting they might have been planning the crime. Michael was released for lack of evidence, but detectives re-questioned Michelle after analyzing her phone. She became agitated and hid something. As investigators pushed for more information, Michelle confessed to planning Nathan's murder with Michael, her lover, for insurance payouts. However, messages revealed her guilt, including a smile emoticon after Nathan's death. Meanwhile, Shannon told police that Michael's account of the attack was truthful. She admitted that she originally cooperated with him, but later surrendered to the police when she felt exploited and feared for her own safety. Hotel security footage supports her claim, revealing that Michael and Shannon arrived at the hotel at 11:40 p.m., which disputes Michael's initial statement that they arrived at 11 p.m. Detectives discovered Corey's involvement in the case after a key witness came forward. Although Corey had consistently denied any involvement, Jessica eventually revealed her role in the sinister plan. Michael Rodriguez, Corey Hawkins, Jessica Austin, and Michelle were arrested on December 8, 2010, and held without bail. Due to concerns about her mental health, Michelle was placed under surveillance to prevent a potential suicide attempt. In Clark County District Court on January 4, 2011, the 4 defendants were formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder and robbery with a firearm, as well as murder with a firearm. Michael and Corey faced additional charges of firearm possession. On September 21, 2015, Michael Rudolph Rodriguez was the first to go on trial for the murder of Nathan. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty. 1 week later, on September 29, 2015, Michael was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. His appeal was later denied. At the time of sentencing, Michael showed no emotion and did not express any regret for his crime. Michelle Pete went on trial in Las Vegas a month later, claiming a change of heart about killing her husband. She tearfully apologized to the victim's parents in court, saying she loved her husband and children and made a terrible mistake, before she fainting. The prosecutor argued that Michelle did not attempt to thwart the conspiracy, despite her claims to the contrary. The evidence presented in court supported this assertion. It was difficult for many to understand how a mother of 4 could become involved in such a heinous crime. The judge ultimately sided with the prosecution, concluding that Michelle was more involved in the crime than she had admitted. Michelle eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder with a firearm, which allowed her to avoid the death penalty. The Pete family also requested that the court not impose the death penalty on Michelle. Corey Alexis Hawkins also accepted a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jessica Austin also took a plea deal with prosecutors and was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. At her final sentencing in March 2016, Michelle again cited her unstable emotional state as a factor in her decision to commit the crime. The Pete family children will likely suffer lifelong trauma, making it hard to form strong bonds. The pain will haunt them, but justice has been served with the 4 responsible individuals facing consequences. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Antonia Barra. Antonia Barra was born on December 3, 1999, in Temuco, Chile, to a wealthy family. She was the youngest of 5 children, with 2 older brothers, Sebastian and Ignacio, and 2 sisters, Catalina and Carla. Antonia was particularly close to Catalina, whom she considered her best friend and confidant. Her parents valued education and encouraged their children to pursue their interests, including sports and music. As the youngest child, Antonia was especially loved and spoiled by her parents. Despite this, she was a diligent student and dreamed of studying tourism and traveling the world. At the age of 15, Antonia met Martin Pradines on social media in 2015. Martin was 8 years older than Antonia and lived in the same city. He was divorced and had a child from a previous marriage. Little is known about Martin's early life, except that he was born in February 1992 in Temuco to Ivan Pronis and Paula Dare. When Martin was 20, he got a girl from his school pregnant, and to avoid scandal and punishment, he married her. However, the marriage ended shortly after the birth of their child. Martin and Antonia were acquaintances who knew each other from socializing with young people on social networks between 2015 and 2017. However, their relationship remained purely platonic. After Antonia graduated from high school and enrolled in university, she relocated to a different city, and they lost touch. At university, Antonia focused on her studies in the travel industry, formed new friendships, and explored new hobbies. Martin was no longer on her mind. During her breaks from university, Antonia would return to her hometown but primarily stayed in touch with her family, including her parents and siblings. During her time at university, Antonia developed a close bond with a fellow student named Consuela Herb, and they became nearly inseparable. She also started a romantic relationship with a student named Rodrigo Aguad, which lasted for approximately a year. However, they got into a dispute at the beginning of the new semester in September 2019 and decided to take a break from each other. Antonio had recently gone through a breakup and was feeling down. Luckily, the Chilean national holiday was just around the corner, offering a long weekend and a chance to take her mind off things. She and her best friend decided to attend an electronic music festival in the charming town of Pucón. They carpooled with 3 classmates, using Consuela's car. As it happened, close friends of Antonio's family owned a summer house in Pucón, and since the owners were out of town, they kindly offered Antonio and her friend the use of their house, even providing them with the spare key. Upon arrival, the group split up, and they friends settled into the spacious and cozy house, looking forward to a relaxing weekend getaway. On the evening of September 18th, Antonia ran into Martín while walking around the city, and they struck up a conversation. As it turned out, Martín was also in town for the festival with his friends and was staying in a large rented house just outside the city center. They hit it off and made plans to meet up the next day at a party at a popular nightclub. Antonia called her parents to fill them in on her plans, and her father warned her to be careful and not to drink too much. Antonia laughed it off and promised to be responsible. The next day, Antonia and her friends spent hours getting ready for the party, choosing outfits and doing their makeup. Before heading out, they shared a bottle of wine and then took a taxi to the club. When they arrived, they ordered a bottle of champagne at the bar and drank it together before hitting the dance floor. It was after midnight when Martín and his friends arrived at the club. Antonia was already quite drunk by then, but she continued to drink and dance with Martín. According to her friend, Consuela, Antonia was advised to slow down, but she didn't listen. At one point, Consuela lost track of Antonia and spent half an hour searching for her. When she finally found her, Antonia was in another room with Martín, barely able to stand due to her intoxication. Consuela saw her classmate Benjamin Morales at the club and asked for his help in getting her friend Antonia home. However, Antonia refused to leave, saying the night was still young. A short while later, she started to feel unwell, and her friends took her outside for some fresh air. After she felt a bit better, she returned to the club. Consuela went to Antonia later that night and told her that she was exhausted and ready to head home. However, Antonia declined, wanting to stay and continue having fun. Consuela then left the club, giving up on convincing Antonia to leave with her. She took a taxi home and went straight to bed. Benjamin saw Martín escorting Antonia out of the club, holding her because she was swaying from side to side. According to Benjamin, Antonia was too drunk to fight back, and Martín took advantage of her state. They waited near the entrance for a while, allowing Antonia to recover a bit. Soon, Martín's friends arrived and suggested they continue partying at their rented house. The company ordered a taxi, but Martín and Antonia decided to walk, as she was unwell and disoriented. Surveillance cameras captured their walk, showing the man supporting a drunk student who was trying to break free from his grasp. Along the way, they stopped at a 24-hour supermarket, where Martín purchased beer. Inside the empty store, Martín attempted to kiss she, but she pushed him away and turned her back on him. It was clear she was uncomfortable, but her intoxication left her unable to resist or escape. Martín, being stronger, continued to lead Antonia, and they eventually arrived at the rented house around 8 a.m. The people in the living room saw that she was upset, but she was too drunk to clearly communicate her distress. Despite Antonia's obvious unease, Martín continued to hug and try to kiss her. The other friends, also heavily intoxicated, failed to intervene. Eventually, they retreated to a bedroom, where the man assaulted she while she was in a dazed state. Antonia was confused and disoriented as Martín ignored her attempts to resist and stop him. After the incident, he rejoined his friends in the living room and continued the party, leaving Antonia alone in the bedroom. Later, around 9 a.m., she managed to call Benjamin, but her speech was slurred and she was crying uncontrollably, making it hard for him to understand her. She was unable to explain what had happened or where she was. Benjamin became concerned and called Consuela, telling her that Antonia was in trouble and needed help. Antonia then called Consuela herself, struggling to communicate, and eventually found out her location, prompting Consuela to go to her aid. When Consuela met Martín at the doorstep, she asked him what had happened, but he just smiled and claimed that everything was consensual. However, when Consuela found her friend, Antonia, in one of the rooms, she was shocked by her condition. Antonia was crying and begged to be taken away from the place as soon as possible. They left shortly after and went home, where Antonia immediately took a shower. Despite her friend's advice to preserve the evidence and report the incident to the police, Antonia insisted that no one should ever find out what had happened. She tried to act normally when she spoke to her parents later that day, hiding her true emotions. The next morning, Antonia and her friends returned to the student dormitory. In the aftermath, Antonia struggled to cope with the trauma. She tried to forget the nightmare and resume her normal life, attending classes and socializing with friends. However, only Consuela noticed that Antonia was not okay. As time passed, Antonia's mental state deteriorated, and she gradually fell into a deep depression. Antonia was traumatized and didn't want to talk to anyone about what had happened to her. She refused to file a police report, fearing that it would only spread the news and make things worse. However, rumors about her began to circulate quickly. They would whisper, point, and laugh at her. One of her classmates even had the audacity to ask her about the rumors in front of everyone. However, what sent Antonia over the edge was a phone call from Rodrigo, her ex-boyfriend, with whom she still had strong feelings and had been holding on to the hope of rekindling their relationship. During the call, Rodrigo repeated all the rumors he had heard and told Antonia that he never wanted to see her again. Antonia broke down in tears, trying to defend herself and explain that the rumors were not true. But Rodrigo was unforgiving, using derogatory language to describe her and calling her promiscuous before hanging up. This conversation was devastating for Antonia, and she couldn't cope with the emotional pain. On Saturday, October 12, 2019, Antonia went to her parents' house, seeking comfort and solace with her family. Concern for Antonia's well-being grew as her relatives noticed a deep sadness in her eyes, despite her claims that everything was okay. Later that evening, she posted old childhood photos on social media, accompanied by a distressing message. The following day, after dinner with her family, Antonia retreated to her room on the third floor. Her sister Catalina checked on her about an hour later, but Antonia asked to be left alone, saying she wanted to sleep. Catalina granted her wish, turned off the light, and bid her a loving goodbye before leaving the room. 2 hours passed before their mother, Marcela, came to Antonia's room to announce that dinner was ready. After knocking on the door with no response, Marcela entered the room and initially thought Antonia was asleep. However, upon touching her hand, she was met with an unsettling stillness. Devastated, Marcela screamed for help, and the rest of the household rushed to the room. In a state of panic, they called for emergency services while attempting to revive Antonia on their own before medical professionals arrived. Antonia's situation had become hopeless, and she tragically took her own life by overdosing on sleeping pills. The investigation into her death and the first attempts to hold the perpetrator accountable began. The news shocked her family and friends, as many were unaware of the severe emotional distress Antonia had been experiencing. As Antonia's parents sought to understand what had happened to their daughter, they spoke with her friends and classmates. They were shocked by the rumors and gossip that had been circulating about Antonia. Consuela, in particular, shared everything she knew, but the parents felt that more needed to be done. They hired a top private detective to help reconstruct the events leading up to Antonia's death and gather evidence to bring the person responsible to justice. Alejandro, determined to seek justice for his daughter, used his connections to organize a press conference. In front of dozens of cameras, he shared the devastating truth: his daughter had been the victim of forced bullying, which she had been unable to survive. The person responsible, he emphasized, remained at large. The detective reconstructed the timeline of events from that fateful night and gathered statements from several key witnesses, including Consuela, Benjamin, and a few other university students, who were willing to testify in court. With all the evidence collected, the Antonia family petitioned the court to arrest and prosecute Martin for his actions. However, the police determined that the evidence presented was insufficient to warrant taking him into custody. Martin claimed that everything that happened was consensual, although he admitted that both parties were intoxicated. Furthermore, the victim did not report the incident to the police. As a result, Martin remained free, and he and his family subsequently filed a lawsuit against the Antonia family, accusing them of defamation, harassment, and the unauthorized disclosure of their personal information. According to the Martin family, Antonia's relatives had slandered their son and brother, Martin. In response, the Martin family decided to hold a press conference to defend themselves publicly. They argued that Martin's reputation had been harmed without justification and presented themselves as the ones who had been wronged. The Martin family also accused Antonia of sharing their personal contact information, including their home address, phone numbers, and social media handles. As a result, Martin and his family received daily insults and anonymous death threats. The Martin family maintained that Martin's guilt had not been proven and that everything had happened by mutual consent. They expressed their willingness to defend Martin's case in court. Surprisingly, after this statement, the police supported the Martin family, causing Antonia's relatives to stop making negative comments about them and to stop sharing personal data. This sudden change was a major blow. This unexpected turn of events was a significant setback. Despite this, Antonia's relatives continued to seek justice with the support of the public. Victims who were initially silent about their experiences began speaking out after Antonia's case gained widespread public attention. Within a month, 8 more girls came forward to the police, claiming they too had been harassed and assaulted by Martin. They had previously remained silent, fearing they would be condemned and censured. One of the victims was just 13 years old at the time of the assault. As more girls who suffered at the hands of Martin began contacting the police, he was eventually taken into custody. Martin was arrested in June 2020 and held at Tomoko City Prison on suspicion of committing assaults between 2011 and 2019. However, Martin was released on his own recognizance less than a month after his lawyer intervened, and was allowed to remain free for the duration of the investigation. Furthermore, several lawsuits filed by the injured girls were rejected due to the statute of limitations having expired. There was a high likelihood that many cases would be disregarded. Out of 8 appeals, only 2 were registered by the court. The release of Martin from custody and the rejection of the victim's claims sparked widespread outrage. Protests and rallies erupted nationwide, with thousands demanding justice. In response, the prosecutor's office re-examined the case and pushed for a change in Martin's bail conditions, seeking to return him to custody. Meanwhile, the statute of limitations was lifted for all cases of violence committed by Martin. During his trial in February 2021, his social media messages were revealed, in which he boasted about his actions to friends. It was also discovered that Martin kept a collection of his victims' underwear at home, taken as trophies. This collection included items from victims who had previously reported him to the court, as well as a belonging of Antonia's. On August 26, 2021, Martin was charged with 9 counts of crimes involving sexual misconduct. 3 of the victims were minors when the incidents occurred. The Antonia family appealed to the public to speak out against violence and bring those responsible to justice. The trial began in June 2022, allowing Martin's lawyers sufficient time to prepare. They presented witness statements and surveillance footage showing that Antonia left with the defendant voluntarily and did not attempt to resist him. The defense challenged the testimonies of other victims, but in August 2022, the court delivered a guilty verdict against Martin. He was convicted of 8 crimes involving sexual misconduct and causing Antonia's nervous breakdown, which ultimately led to her death. Martin was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, his lawyers, led by Pinus, promptly filed an appeal. On December 29, the Supreme Court ordered a new trial. In March 2023, Martin's case was assigned to the Public Defender's Office. During the new trial, Martin maintained his innocence, attributing the events leading to Antonia's death to the large quantity of alcohol they had consumed together. Despite this, on July 7, 2023, Martin was found guilty again. The court reduced his initial 20-year sentence to 17 years, considering the 3 years he had already spent in prison. He had only 14 years left to serve. However, Antonia's family expressed dissatisfaction with this decision in an official press release made by her father. They noted that no punishment could bring back their daughter. During the ongoing lawsuits, Antonia's family and other victims affected by Martin's actions joined forces with public figures to advocate for women's rights. Together, they worked to amend the criminal code, specifically the sections related to sexual offenses. Their objective was to protect the rights of victims of harassment and sexual violence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ana Rosa Barrera. Ana Rosa Barrera, a 40-year-old woman. She lived in a commune in the Santa Maria department, near Córdoba City, in the province of Córdoba, Argentina. People close to her described Ana Rosa as a courageous and adventurous person who was not afraid to start over and move forward with determination. Reports indicate that Ana Rosa lived in a tent for 4 years, although the reasons for this are unclear. She worked at the Secretariat for Children, Adolescents, and Families in Córdoba, a job she truly enjoyed. Additionally, she and her partner, Marcelo Favio Ferretto, ran an upholstery workshop together. They met when Ana Rosa started working for Marcelo's business. By 2017, Ana Rosa and Marcelo had been in a 10-year relationship. They shared a common interest in Reiki, a practice that involves using the palms to promote physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Despite this common point, they still have problems in the relationship. Ana Rosa and Marcelo each have 4 children from previous relationships. As for Ana Rosa's family, her parents, brothers, and sisters reside in Córdoba. About Marcelo, he was a wallpaper maker with a workshop near their home. People close to they described Marcelo as a jealous and controlling person, which annoyed Ana Rosa. On Sunday, May 28, they visited relatives in Villa Lend, but the trip was marred by a heated argument sparked by Marcelo checking Ana Rosa's phone. The argument continued at their home, with neighbors hearing them shout and insult each other until the early hours of Monday morning. Later that day, Marcelo reported Ana Rosa missing to the police, although the exact timing of the report is disputed in media accounts. Most reports agree that Marcelo filed the report at the 18th police station on Tuesday, May 30th. According to Marcelo, claimed to have woken up at 6 a.m. on Monday to find Ana Rosa already gone, which he thought was unusual since she typically got up early to feed their dogs before leaving the house. He repeated this account to both the police and the media. Marcelo said he last saw Ana Rosa on Sunday night and then Monday night before going to bed. According to some sources, Marcelo realized something was wrong when Ana Rosa's colleagues called him, wondering about her absence. They knew she would never miss work without a good reason. Marcelo recounted the events leading up to her disappearance, saying that on Monday, he came across Ana Rosa's white Chevrolet while running an errand at the local pharmacy. Not long after, police discovered an abandoned car on Rainier Avenue outside a beauty salon in the Santa Isabel neighborhood. The location is about halfway between their home and Ana Rosa's workplace. Inside the car were her belongings and keys, but her cell phone was nowhere to be found. According to Marcelo, he tried to contact her, their friends, and their children also left messages, but no one received a response. The last message Ana Rosa sent via WhatsApp was at 10:40 p.m. Sunday, May 28. Ana Rosa's relatives all said that the circumstances surrounding Ana Rosa's disappearance are unclear. Marcelo has maintained regular contact with police since filing the report and has also attempted to locate Ana Rosa through social media and news outlets. In an interview with reporters, Marcelo shared Ana Rosa's plans on the day she went missing, which included an early morning swim at a gym and a scheduled appointment with a doctor. Marcelo emphasized that his primary concern is Ana Rosa's safe return home. Prosecutor Legendro Peralta Tanilo of Alta Gracia assumed control of the case, and the investigation commenced. Multiple theories were initially proposed, including the possibility of Ana Rosa being a victim of kidnapping, robbery, or revenge. The option of her leaving voluntarily was also considered. As part of the investigation, Marcelo testified for over 14 hours on Wednesday, May 31. However, his statements became increasingly inconsistent, raising suspicions among investigators. Marcelo's claims raised suspicions among detectives due to inconsistencies and shifting demeanor. Initially, he was confident and gave frequent interviews, but later emphasized his innocence, providing unsolicited details and justifying himself by discussing his relationship with Ana Rosa. As time passed, Ana Rosa's loved ones became increasingly desperate due to the lack of progress in the search. Meanwhile, the investigative authorities persisted in their efforts to solve the case. The prosecutor leading the investigation was convinced that Marcelo was withholding information and urged the investigators to scrutinize him more thoroughly. On Friday, June 2nd, during another meeting with police officers, Marcelo's demeanor shifted. He became more composed. However, when detectives showed him data from cell phone towers that contradicted his alibi, Marcelo became dismayed and ultimately revealed the truth. He admitted to killing Ana Rosa, running her over, and then dismembering her body to get rid of the evidence. After confessing to the brutal crime, Marcelo revealed the location of the dismembered body of Ana Rosa. Following the Marcelo confession, the police, aided by a canine unit, found Ana Rosa's remains at approximately 2:30 p.m. in a hole dug by Marcelo on a dirt road in the countryside, near a factory. The location was familiar to Marcelo, as he frequently visited the area for work-related purposes. It became clear that Marcelo's previous statements were false, except for his mention of a quarrel that occurred early Monday morning. According to the reconstructed events, Marcelo and Ana Rosa had been arguing the entire weekend before she went missing. Marcelo's intense jealousy sparked the violence. In the heat of an argument, Marcelo used a sledgehammer to hit Ana Rosa multiple times until she died. He then tried to put her body in the car but failed. Instead, he used a knife to dismember her body. He placed Ana Rosa's remains in the car and began moving to her burial site. After pleading guilty, authorities conducted a search of the defendant and Ana Rosa's home on Friday, where they discovered various tools, including machetes and knives of various sizes. Marcelo was then arrested and facing charges of capital murder, a crime that could carry a sentence of life in prison. Prosecutor Peralta Atima explained that the defendant's statement, in which he took responsibility for the crime, was not considered a formal confession. Instead, the record shows that he admitted to the crime during an interview as a witness. A formal statement will be made in the coming days, once sufficient evidence is gathered to support the charges. This evidence will include the final autopsy report, forensic analysis of vehicles and items found during searches, and the results of luminal tests. Marcelo's lawyer, Jose Luis Saca, stated that the police statement had no legal weight and could not as evidence. Furthermore, the defense announced that the defendant would not testify. Over the weekend, investigations continued, and on June 5, the preliminary autopsy report was released. The report concluded that Ana Rosa's cause of death was severe head trauma. On June 9, it was discovered that luminol tests had been conducted at the home where Ana Rosa and Marcelo lived. The tests showed a large amount of blood had been cleaned up. The medical examiners also discovered new details during the autopsy, including knife cuts on the victim's extremities. A cut, 18 centimeters long and 7 centimeters deep, was found on the victim's neck, reaching the cervical region. Based on these findings, the prosecutor's office charged Marcelo with double aggravated murder. Almost 2 years after Ana Rosa's murder, Marcelo's trial began. The prosecution explained the seriousness of the charges to the jury. According to the autopsy results, Ana Rosa suffered a severe initial blow to the face, which left her unconscious, followed by multiple blows to the head that crushed her skull. At the first hearing, Marcelo decided to stay silent. The court then heard testimony from witnesses. Deborah Territorios, Ana Rosa's daughter, testified that after her mother met Marcelo, she became increasingly distant from her children and other family members. Deborah stated that she and her father moved to a different city, followed by her older siblings, which made it harder for them to communicate with their mother. However, when Deborah spent time alone with her mother, Ana Rosa was loving and caring. But whenever Marcelo was around, her mother would pull away. Deborah even had to leave her mother's house quickly on occasion because Marcelo was expected to arrive soon. Ana Rosa's cousin, Roberto Enrique Reina, also testified. He witnessed their argument on May 28, 2017, which started at his house. According to Roberto, the argument began when Marcelo saw a message on Ana Rosa's phone. The prosecutor's indictment highlights Marcelo's control over Ana Rosa, including a power imbalance in their relationship and objectifying her in front of others. Fernando, a co-worker and friend of the victim, Ana Rosa, explained that after she started dating Marcelo, she initially grew distant from everyone, but then she tried to reconnect. System. Fernando added that Marcelo seemed to imitate Ana Rosa's actions, even taking Reiki classes shortly after learning she was also taking. According to the indictment, Ana Rosa told a friend that after starting energy harmonization therapy, she felt better and was able to improve her relationships with family members. She also planned to visit her son in Bolivia. However, as Ana Rosa's life improved, Marcelo became increasingly aggressive. Fernando reported that Marcelo once lashed out when Ana Rosa said women with positive attitudes could achieve their goals, he calling women idiots who would end up dying in a ditch. On the second day of the hearing, Claudio Bustamante, the police officer who took Marcelo's statement, testified. He told the jury that Marcelo had spontaneously confessed during the interrogation without any pressure from him. According to Bustamante, Marcelo stated that Ana Rosa had told him on Monday that she was no longer satisfied with him and was cheating on him, which made Marcelo angry and prompted him to hit her, although he couldn't remember what he used to hit her. On April 11, the 11th Criminal Court's jury delivered its verdict, finding Marcelo Favio fair guilty of the murder of Ana Rosa Barrera. The sentence was life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 35 years, conditional on good behavior. Upon hearing the verdict, Ana Rosa's relatives burst into tears and shouted at Marcelo, labeling him as a murderer and wishing him to spend the rest of his life in prison. The prosecutor in charge of the case stated that the jury's decision aligned with the prosecution's request. The evidence showed that Marcelo Favio Fair had acted with full awareness and premeditation in planning Ana Rosa's murder. According to the prosecution, Marcelo's attempt to appear mentally unstable at the time of the crime was a tactic to evade the maximum sentence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ashley Wadsworth. Ashley Wadsworth was born on July 25, 2002, in Vernon Township, British Columbia, Canada. She was the daughter of Kenneth Wadsworth and Christie Lynn Mullins, and had an older sister named Haley. The Wadsworth family was large and close-knit, consisting of over 50 people, including cousins, uncles, and aunts of varying degrees of kinship, all living in the same community. Ashley was a cheerful, outgoing, and energetic girl who was popular and had many friends. She enjoyed outdoor activities such as swimming, horseback riding, and skiing. She was also passionate about tennis and played the clarinet. Ashley was very active on social media, frequently sharing memes, jokes, and photos. It was through social media that Ashley met Jack Seppel in 2015, when she was 12 years old and he was 15. Jack Seppel was born on January 9, 1999. His mother, Tracy Dalton, was married to a man named Ricky. Jack's relationship with his father, who passed away in 2019, was reportedly strained. Jack did not communicate with his brother, Jordan, but he did stay in touch with his sister, Nadia. Apart from his mother and sister, Jack did not have many close relationships, preferring to interact with people primarily through the internet and video games. According to Jack's acquaintances, he had a mixed reputation in school. On the one hand, he was remembered as a charming, fun, and lively kid. On the other hand, they recalled his dark side, which emerged when he became angry and displayed aggressive behavior towards himself and others. A mutual friend introduced Jack to Ashley through social media, a common way for teenagers to meet and form virtual friendships. As their online relationship grew, Ashley and Jack became close virtual friends. At the time, Ashley didn't have a smartphone and used her family's computer to access social media, so her family was aware of her friendship with Jack. During their long-distance friendship, Jack had relationships with other girls, and Ashley also had typical teenage experiences. Although they occasionally stopped communicating, their connection never completely faded, and they continued to stay in touch over the years. As they grew older, Ashley and Jack's relationship evolved. They started communicating through video calls, which led to a more intimate and romantic relationship. Jack became a familiar figure to Ashley's family, who would often greet him warmly when they saw him talking to the guys. He also sent Ashley gifts, such as teddy bears and purses, on multiple occasions. Ashley's family and friends noticed that she had a tendency to compare every boy she met to Jack. However, due to the significant time difference between their locations, Jack lived in Essex, while Ashley was in Vernon. They struggled to find time to talk, often waking up too early and going to bed too late. As Ashley turned 15 in 2018, she began to express a desire to meet Jack in person. However, her family refused to let her travel alone to another continent. Like many young couples, they occasionally argued, and when Ashley would block Jack on social media during these fights, he would find ways to contact her again, creating new accounts or sending messages through his sister or acquaintances. This behavior was seen as disturbing and intrusive by Ashley's loved ones, but she continued to insist that Jack was a kind and compassionate person. In October 2018, Jack, who was 19 at the time, got a tattoo of Ashley's name on his arm when she was just 16. Her parents thought this display of affection was excessive and warned her to be cautious. However, Jack soon began exhibiting jealous and violent behavior. He would become angry if he suspected Ashley was talking to other guys, despite continuing to date other girls himself. He claimed Ashley was his favorite and swore his loyalty to her alone. This incident marked the beginning of a disturbing pattern of behavior. Ashley's friends and family grew increasingly concerned as Jack's behavior escalated. One day, Ashley called a friend who was at Jack's house, and he wouldn't let her leave. According to the friend who overheard the conversation, Ashley surprisingly remained calm, as if she was used to such situations. She simply asked Jack to stop being crazy. Ashley confided in her friends about the incident but didn't tell her parents. However, her friends strongly advised her to cut off all contact with Jack. Despite his history of fights and problematic behavior, Ashley and Jack continued to reconcile. At just 18 years old, Ashley had known Jack since her early teens, but she seemed unaware of the extent to which he had manipulated her from a young age. Ashley started working at fast food restaurants and department stores to save money for leisure activities. Her first purchase was a tablet, which allowed her to use social media more privately. She then began saving for a trip. During her senior year of high school, Ashley, a spiritual and inquisitive person, had a profound moment of insight after reading the Book of Mormon. This led her to start following the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ashley graduated from Sighton High School in 2020. She wanted to experience university life fully, so she decided to take a year-long break before continuing her studies. In the first half of 2021, Ashley continued working in saving money. In April of that year, she was baptized into Mormonism. With her newfound independence and financial stability, Ashley decided to travel to the UK to meet Jack in person and celebrate his birthday with him. Despite her parents' and friends' concerns, Ashley was determined to make the trip, as she was of legal age and had her own savings. Ashley left Canada for the UK on November 12, 2021, on a 6-month tourist visa. This was her first time leaving her homeland, and she was thrilled. The next day, November 13, 2021, Ashley met Jack in person for the first time. On the same day, Ashley updated her profile picture to a photo of them together. At 22 years old, Jack looked significantly older than Ashley, who was 19. His numerous tattoos, including those on his face, created a striking contrast with Ashley's youthful appearance. During her stay in London, Ashley lived with Jack in his house, located in a public housing estate in northwest Chelmsford. The neighborhood had a questionable reputation, but they spent time exploring the nicer areas of the city in Essex. Jack seemed like the same charming and caring person Ashley had met online, often showering her with compliments and taking romantic selfies. However, Jack's behavior was inconsistent, and he could be cruel at times. Despite being together daily, Ashley's tourist visa prevented her from working, and Jack was unemployed, relying on benefits. Occasionally, his mother Tracy, who lived nearby, provided support. Throughout her trip, Ashley regularly posted photos and updates on social media, showcasing their happy moments and romantic experiences. The pictures often featured they embracing, highlighting their seemingly joyful relationship. Ashley kept in regular touch with her family through video calls, and everything seemed fine at first. They even adopted a new kitten, Winston, which was a positive addition to their lives. Nevertheless, over time, Jack started to become more withdrawn and isolated. Ashley's trip to England was supposed to be an exciting adventure, but it quickly turned into a restrictive and isolating experience. Her boyfriend, Jack, had lost interest in exploring the country and instead preferred to stay indoors, smoke, and play video games. As a result, Ashley's options for activities were severely limited, and she was forced to do only what Jack wanted. Before arriving in England, one of Ashley's friends from church had arranged for her to meet some American missionaries who would be in Chelmsford at the same time. Ashley was eager to connect with them, but Jack refused to let her attend church on Sundays. Despite this, she continued to secretly communicate with the missionaries through text messages, deleting the conversations to avoid Jack's suspicion. Ashley's new friends soon realized that Jack was controlling and possibly abusive. When she confided in them about her problems, Ashley admitted that she knew she deserved better, but she was trying to keep Jack happy. However, the abuse went beyond controlling her communication. About 6 weeks into their trip, Jack became violent when he discovered that Ashley had blocked 2 UK phone numbers. He mistakenly believed that the numbers belonged to other men, triggering a jealous outburst. In a disturbing text message to his mother, Jack revealed that he had physically abused Ashley. Ashley created a secret profile where she documented the bruises she had sustained. She confided in her sister Haley about the abuse, but warned her not to tell their mother, fearing that their family would turn against Jack. After Jack overdosed on anti-anxiety medication in late December 2021, Ashley was tasked with overseeing his medication as his caregiver. She kept this responsibility a secret from her mother and friends, but Haley inadvertently revealed the truth. Ashley's mother expressed concern and asked her to return home, but Ashley insisted on staying with Jack until he recovered. In early January 2022, another disturbing incident occurred. Jack smashed a beer glass over Ashley's head, leaving her in tears. While Jack forced her to clean up the broken glass, Ashley contacted her sister via video call, revealing the true extent of her situation. Jack was frantic, pacing back and forth, yelling, and grinding his teeth. His distress prompted Ashley to contact her sister, Haley, who urged her to return home. However, Haley's concerns fell on deaf ears. A brief period of calm followed, marked by Jack's 23rd birthday celebration with his family, where everyone put on a united front and pretended everything was fine. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Jack's mother and stepfather organized a family vacation to a seaside town shortly after. The photos from the trip appeared perfect, showcasing a happy and tranquil Ashley, which brought relief to her parents, who remained unaware of the seriousness of the situation. In late January, an intense argument broke out, and Jack's behavior turned violent once again. He hit Ashley and threw a candle and a TV remote at her while she was video chatting with Haley, who was pleading with her to return home. Although Ashley had initially agreed, she ultimately decided to stay. Despite witnessing Jack's cruel nature, she clung to the hope that the charming person she once knew was still buried deep within him. Ashley was convinced that time, her love, or perhaps medical treatment could help Jack overcome his destructive tendencies, a sentiment that was echoed by her mother during subsequent conversations with Jack. Jack accused Ashley of cheating on him, physically abused her, and later apologized. Despite feeling guilty about his actions, Jack's behavior continued. The situation escalated on the morning of February 1, 2022, when Jack became angry with Ashley again. He accused her of abandoning him and seeing other people in secret. He demanded to see her phone and check her social media accounts to prove his allegations. Around 8 a.m., their neighbor Haley Borton Shaw heard Ashley's screams through the shared wall. Ashley soon showed up at Jack's doorstep, drawing attention to the distressing situation unfolding between them. Haley was shocked and Ashley appeared at her door, barefoot and crying, with a cut on her palm that was bleeding. Ashley explained that Jack had become enraged when he caught her looking at intimate photos of them. He had verbally abused her, physically attacked her, smashed her phone, and thrown her kitten against the wall. Despite Haley's concerns for Ashley's safety and fear that Jack might try to harm her, Ashley asked Haley not to call the police. Haley reluctantly agreed, but begged Ashley to see a doctor instead of returning to Jack's apartment. When Ashley refused, Haley decided to go and talk to Jack herself. During their conversation, Jack apologized for his actions and remained calm. Haley then left for a doctor's appointment around 9 a.m. Meanwhile, Jack's neighbor received a misdelivered package and brought it to his doorstep. Jack was hesitant to answer the door, which wasn't unusual since he was known to be an unfriendly and paranoid person. Around this time, Ashley called her family using Jack's cell phone, informing them of her situation. Ashley's mother was already aware of what was going on because Haley had previously confided in her about Jack's abusive behavior towards Ashley. Ashley's parents immediately bought her a return ticket for February 3rd to escape the abusive relationship. When she informed Jack, he offered to drive her to the airport. However, before she left, Ashley's mother made it clear that if Jack hurt her again, she would contact the police. She also advised Ashley to go straight to the airport if Jack assaulted her again. The conversation between Ashley and her family lasted for 3 hours before they ended the call. It was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford and 3 a.m. in Vernon when the call ended. A short time later, Jack sent a message to his mother, admitting to brutally beating Ashley again. During the assault, Ashley fell to the floor and possibly broke her arm. This violent incident occurred between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 a.m. Ashley managed to send several messages to her family and friends using Jack's phone, but since it was nighttime, no one responded immediately. She also reached out to her friends at the church in Chelmsford, asking for help and describing the emergency. Unfortunately, these messages were not received until hours later, when it was too late to intervene. Between 12:38 and 12:45, Jack violently attacked Ashley, choking her until she lost consciousness. He then proceeded to the kitchen, retrieved an 11-centimeter knife, and repeatedly stabbed Ashley's chest and stomach around 100 times, ultimately ending her life. Following the attack, Jack updated his social media profile picture with a photo of himself and Ashley, accompanied by the caption, "Always mine." He also recorded a video message for Haley, expressing his love for Ashley, apologizing, and stating that he couldn't let her go, adding that his mental state was unstable. The video, which was never sent, showed Ashley's body next to him. Meanwhile, in Vernon, Ashley's family discovered a large number of messages from her on their phones. They immediately contacted Jamie Ashworth, a family friend from their Mormon community in Chelmsford. Jamie and Tyler Borden, another acquaintance from the church, went to Jack's apartment in England. After knocking on the door and receiving no response, they called the police and left the scene. In a desperate attempt to cover his tracks, Jack texted Ashley's family and friends, pretending to be her. However, the messages from loved ones continued to pour in, and Jack ignored them. Meanwhile, they were frantically trying to reach Ashley. Eventually, Jack called his sister Nadia and confessed to killing Ashley, even going so far as to show her the body. This disturbing conversation took place at approximately 4:13 p.m. When the police arrived at the apartment 10 minutes after Jamie's call, they found that the situation had already turned tragic. They arrested Jack, who was covered in blood, on the spot. He told the officers that he had experienced a psychotic episode and confessed to the crime. As a result, he was taken into custody and sent to Chelmsford Prison. His trial was scheduled for September 7, 2022, at Chelmsford Crown Court. The court's psychiatric examination concluded that Jack was mentally fit to stand trial. However, the evidence against him was irrefutable, including a video recording of him admitting to the crime. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Jack immediately pleaded guilty. The judge then informed him that, given his confession, a life imprisonment sentence was inevitable. At the hearing, which took place under Judge Edward Murray at Chelmsford Crown Court, prosecutor Simon Spence detailed Jack's extensive criminal history, which dated back to his teenage years. During the hearing, Ashley's parents learned the disturbing truth about Jack. Jack had a history of run-ins with the law, including arrests for stalking, kidnapping, and violent assault. He had also been issued multiple restraining orders, including against his mother and former girlfriend. The revelation of Jack's extensive criminal record shocked and devastated Ashley's parents, who had never suspected the true nature of the man who had taken their daughter's life. During the hearing, the prosecution and defense discussed a letter written by Jack from prison, in which he apologized for his actions. The letter was later released to the media by Judge Murray, who cited the importance of transparency in the justice system. In the letter, Jack expressed regret to Ashley's family, especially her mother and sister Haley, acknowledging that nothing could undo the harm he had caused. Jack accepted responsibility for his actions and acknowledged that his mental state contributed to the tragedy. He also claimed to have previously discussed his mental health with Ashley. Ultimately, Jack was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christie Wilson. Christie Wilson was born on January 10, 1978, in San Jose, California. She attended Gunderson High School and later earned a business degree from California State University, Chico. Her parents, Debbie Boyd and Patrick Boyd, described her as an exceptional student and athlete. After college, Christie landed a job at a tech company near Sacramento, where she worked until the high-tech crisis led to her job loss. In her free time, she enjoyed playing blackjack at a local casino, where she met her boyfriend, Danny Burlando. Initially, Christie's relationship with Danny was quite harmonious, and her family and friends thought they made a great couple. However, things took a turn for the worse after they moved to Sacramento together. Christie started showing up with bruises, but she wouldn't talk about how she got them. Following her job loss, Christie returned to her parents' home in San Jose. She eventually received a job offer in San Francisco and decided to start fresh. On October 4, 2005, Christie Wilson went to Sacramento to collect her remaining belongings. However, just 2 days later, her boyfriend Danny Burlando contacted her parents to report that she had vanished. He claimed to have searched for her by contacting local jails, hospitals, and friends before reaching out to them. The police were also informed about Christie's disappearance. According to Danny, Christie visited his apartment on October 4th. He then went to dinner with his family, while Christie went to the Thunder Valley Casino. This was the last time he saw her. It's worth noting that Danny's family didn't get along with Christie, which is why he attended the family dinner without her. The tension between their families was due to concerns about Christie's safety. Christie's family had noticed bruises on her body, suggesting that Danny had been physically abusing her. Christie's stepfather, Patrick Boyd, was particularly upset when he found out about the abuse. He wanted to confront Danny, but Christie's mother, Debbie Boyd, intervened to prevent a confrontation. Danny Burlando was 31 years old when Christie disappeared. He had recently lost his job as a car salesman. About a month prior to Christie's disappearance, the police were called to their residence after neighbors reported hearing Christie screaming. Although the police found that they had been arguing, they made up quickly and no further action was taken. When Christie went missing, Danny was the primary suspect due to their previous altercation. His decision to wait nearly 48 hours before reporting her missing to the police raised suspicions that he might have used this time to destroy evidence. However, Danny cooperated fully with the investigation, allowing police to examine his phone records, credit card activity, computer, apartment, and car. Despite being a suspect, no evidence of foul play was found. Danny had an alibi for the time Christie went missing, having attended a family dinner. Before reporting her disappearance, he attempted to contact Christie 78 times, but she did not answer. The police interviewed Christie's friends and family, and reviewed her phone and credit card activities, but found no activity on her bank account since October 4th. Christie's family and the police worked together to find her. They searched the area with dogs, volunteers, and a police helicopter. Her family asked people to share any information they had about Christie's whereabouts. Danny searched for Christie on his own and visited the Thunder Valley Casino. The casino staff couldn't give him any useful information. However, he found Christie's car in the parking lot. The investigators arrived at the casino and confirmed Christie's car was still in the parking lot. This finding caused confusion rather than answers. There were no signs of a fight or other suspicious activities around her car. The big questions were whether Christie left the casino on her own and why her car remained there. Detectives reviewed security footage inside and outside the casino, hoping to understand what had happened. At the same time, the police conducted another search of Christie and Danny's apartment, but it yielded no results. Meanwhile, Christie's stepfather, Patrick, a police officer, organized a search of a nearby river, but nothing was found. The investigation shifted its focus to Thunder Valley Casino, where Christie was last seen. Using her player's card, investigators tracked her movements and discovered that she played blackjack around 11 p.m. The casino's recordings showed Christie sitting at a table with a man, but Danny was nowhere to be seen. The man and Christie appeared to be communicating, congratulating each other on wins and offering comfort when they lost. They spent about 6 hours together at the casino, during which the man was seen putting his hand on Christie's shoulder. Christie had a night of mixed results. She began well, winning and keeping a good count of the cards. However, as the evening progressed, her luck turned, and she started to lose. As she consumed more drinks, Christie became increasingly agitated and lost control. The casino staff eventually asked her to leave, but the man intervened, saying, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this beauty." Shortly after, the man and Christie left the casino together, as captured on camera. During a visit to Thunder Valley, detectives made a significant discovery when casino employees found a mobile phone under a blackjack table. The phone belonged to Christie, and it's possible she had unknowingly dropped it. This development hindered the police's plan to track Christie's location through her phone. Further investigation of the CCTV footage revealed that Christie and a man she had met at the casino left the blackjack table and went to the parking lot 4 minutes later. A white car, later identified as belonging to the man, left the parking lot, while Christie's vehicle remained in place. The detective suspected that Christie might have left with the man in his car. The police needed to determine whether Christie had willingly accompanied the man or if he had forced her into the car. After analyzing players' card data, detectives identified the man as Mario Flavio Garcia, a 53-year-old family man from Auburn with a successful IT career. As the investigation progressed, the detectives discovered that the white car seen in the CCTV footage belonged to Mario Garcia, making him the primary suspect in Christie's disappearance. However, the footage showed that Mario Garcia appeared to be alone in the car when he left the parking lot, and Christie never returned to her vehicle. Mario Garcia had stayed in the parking lot for 3 minutes and 41 seconds, raising questions about what might have occurred between him and Christie during that time. Detectives investigating Mario Garcia's life discovered a stark contrast between his public and private persona. While he was a respected community member and football coach, he also had a dark history. 25 years prior, Mario had been arrested for kidnapping his ex-girlfriend, taking her to a secluded location, and forcing her into a sexual act at gunpoint. Despite the severity of the crime, the case was plea bargained down to assault with a deadly weapon, resulting in a lenient sentence of 18 months probation. This was not the only instance where Mario's caught the attention of police. In another incident, Mario was involved in a tumultuous relationship with Lynette Smith. In 1979, Mario, Lynette, and her mother, Violet Davis, spent Christmas together. After dinner, the three of them got into Lynette's car, which subsequently crashed into a river near Oakland Airport. Mario, the sole survivor, claimed Lynette was driving, but investigators could not confirm this. Violet Davis's body was found in a car, while Lynette's body was not recovered until a week later. The incident was initially believed to be an accident, and no one was charged in connection with the deaths. After collecting the available information, investigators interviewed Mario about Christie Wilson. He maintained he was unaware of her disappearance and stated that they left the casino together, parted ways politely after exchanging goodbyes, and went in different directions. Although he claimed to have headed home immediately, his words couldn't be confirmed or disputed through the casino's CCTV footage. Nonetheless, by reviewing security recordings from surrounding locations, investigators ascertained Mario lied. CCTV evidence outside of the casino caught Mario heading the opposite way of his claimed direction after they were separated. Mario claimed to have gone straight home and fallen asleep at 8:30 a.m. after leaving the casino. However, his wife refused to cooperate with the police, leaving detectives unable to verify his alibi. A review of Mario's cell phone records revealed discrepancies in his story. A call to his wife at 7:51 a.m. was made from a cell tower located far from his house, indicating he did not go home immediately after the casino. Mario also stated that he arrived at work at 9 a.m., but a colleague reported that he was late, arriving around 10 a.m. Further investigation revealed that Mario had scratches on his arm and a bruise under one eye the day after Christie Wilson's disappearance. When questioned, Mario attributed the injuries to a fall from a tree while pruning. However, detectives were skeptical of this explanation, as it is unlikely that someone would prune trees at night. The police asked a forensic expert to examine Mario Garcia's injuries. The expert found that the scratches on Mario's face and body didn't match the kind of injuries you'd get from falling out of a tree. There were 4 parallel scratches on his face, and 3 more on the left side of his chest. This was suspicious because Christie Wilson was right-handed. The police suspected Mario was involved in Christie's disappearance, so they got a search warrant for his car, home, and computer. Mario had claimed he went home after saying goodbye to Christie in the parking lot, but as investigators searched his car, they started to think Christie was probably dead. Mario had tried to clean up his car, washing both the inside and outside, and even throwing away the trunk mat. However, he hadn't been able to get rid of all the evidence. Initially, investigators found a small, unremarkable spot on the car seat that was later confirmed to be blood. However, the sample was not suitable for DNA analysis. Further examination of the vehicle revealed 2 long hairs and small blood splatters on the back door of the trunk. The hairs were matched to the missing person, Christie. Further examination of the bloodstains showed that they contained DNA from both Mario and Christie, which disagreed with Mario's statement that he and Christie had separated in the parking lot. This evidence suggested a physical altercation between Mario and Christie. A review of Mario's search history showed that he had been researching forensic toxicology and visiting websites that described how to secretly administer drugs to someone's drink on a date. This led investigators to suspect that Christie may have been a random victim who was targeted by Mario after they sat together at a table. It was possible that Mario had spiked her drink. To prove this, the police needed to find Christie's body. A thorough search of Garcia's 5-acre property was conducted, but unfortunately, no new leads were discovered. Mario Garcia was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder despite the absence of Christie Wilson's body. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial, which began on September 11, 2006. Prosecutors presented evidence suggesting that Mario had met Christie at a blackjack table, left the casino with her, attacked and killed her, and then hid her body. During the trial, Mario questioned the validity of the evidence, pointing out that only Christie's DNA was found on his car door, while the DNA of his family members and others who had been in the car was not detected. He suggested that the police had planted Christie's DNA as evidence. Mario stated to the court that he would not request leniency or pardon, claiming that he was innocent and did not commit the crime. However, the jury found him guilty on January 11, 2007, and he was sentenced to 59 years to life in prison. After the sentencing, Christie's family held out hope that Mario Garcia would finally reveal the location of her body. However, he refused to cooperate. As the years went by, the family struggled to move on with their lives, which had been forever changed by the traumatic experience. Mario's repeated appeals only added to their distress, despite being unsuccessful. The ongoing appeals prevented the family from finding closure and moving on with their lives. In 2018, Mario offered to provide information about Christie's body in exchange for an early release from prison. However, Christie's mother, Debbie Boyd, was unwilling to negotiate with him. She felt that using her daughter's body as a bargaining chip would be unacceptable. The police then turned to Mario's family for assistance, knowing that his ex-wife, Jean, had divorced him after his imprisonment. Jean eventually lost faith in her ex-husband and began to suspect that he was involved in Christie's disappearance and death. As part of their investigation, police spoke with Mario Garcia's sons, Chris and Andy, asking them to recall any details about the days surrounding Christie's disappearance and their father's subsequent arrest. The police were particularly interested in learning about any changes in Mario's behavior during that time. Chris remembered that he had a football game around that time and saw his father working frantically on a tractor on their plot. Mario's eyes had a wild, frantic look that caught Chris off guard. When Chris asked his father to attend his game, Mario firmly refused, saying he's not going. This response struck Chris as out of character for his father. At the request of investigators, Chris accompanied them to his childhood home. Chris showed them the exact location where he had seen his father working on the tractor, which was next to a detached garage near the road, approximately 100 yards from the Mario residence. It became clear that Mario had made a significant effort to conceal any evidence, taking advantage of the 4 or 5 days he had to cover his tracks. Notably, police had previously searched the Mario property with police dogs in 2005, but had found nothing at the time. In a new development, investigators took a different approach in August 2020. They hired a company that specializes in ground-penetrating radar technology to scan the 5-acre property owned by Mario Garcia. The technicians identified 8 potential locations with voids or pockets beneath the surface. After digging at the first 2 sites, they found nothing. However, at the 3rd location, which was the same spot where Mario Garcia had been digging with a tractor, the police discovered a skeleton. Further examination confirmed that the remains belonged to Christie Wilson, 15 years after she went missing. Although the exact cause of Christie's death remains unknown, experts determined that she had suffered a broken arm and nose. The investigators, who had been working on the case for 15 years, traveled to Arizona to personally inform Christie's mother, Debbie Boyd, about the discovery. The news brought a mix of sadness and relief to Christie's family, who could finally find closure and say goodbye to their daughter. Placer County Sheriff Devin Bell announced that Christie Wilson's case has been solved, thanks to efforts by his team. This was achieved without the cooperation of Mario Garcia, a convicted murderer who is currently in prison. Mario, 67, had refused to provide any information to help the family find closure. According to Christie's mother, Debbie Boyd, this news brings her family peace and marks the end of a painful chapter. She praised the perseverance of the police and thanked them for their tireless efforts. Notably, Mario had died of pneumonia in 2020, but even his death had brought some peace to the family. Mario had never pleaded guilty to any involvement in Christie's disappearance, despite her remains being found on Mario's plot in 2005. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marina Menegazzo and Maria Jose Coney. This story began in 2016 in the Argentine city of Mendoza. On January 10th, 2 young women, 21-year-old Marina Menegazzo and 22-year-old Maria Jose Coney, embarked on a highly anticipated trip. Unfortunately, their journey ultimately led to one of the most publicized investigations in Latin America over the past decade. At the time, Maria Jose was a 22-year-old economics student at the National University of Cuyo, while Marina was a 21-year-old speech therapy student at the Aconcagua University. Both women volunteered for an organization that assisted homeless individuals. According to friends and acquaintances, they were 2 bright and cheerful young women who were extremely close to their families. Marina Menegazzo and Maria Jose Coney embarked on a trip with 2 friends, but the group eventually parted ways. They girls continued their journey, which began on January 10th. Their route can be tracked through Maria Jose Coney's Instagram posts. On January 13th, they were in Cusco, Peru, an ancient city that was once the capital of the Inca Empire. The next day, January 14th, another photo was posted, also taken in Cusco. A subsequent image was published on January 15th, showing they on a railway bridge near the Machu Picchu hydroelectric power plant. Machu Picchu is a famous ancient Inca city, often referred to as the City Above the Clouds, and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Maria Jose Coney and Marina Manazzo had about 10 days of vacation left and were in no rush to return home. They decided to revisit Montañita, the town in Ecuador where their trip had begun. On February 22nd, Maria Jose Coney posted a photo of herself with Marina Manazzo on Instagram, which would be her last post. On the same day, they contacted their families in Argentina to let them know they would be returning soon. They planned to take a bus from Ecuador to Lima, Peru, where they would spend the night at a friend's house. From Lima, they would fly to Santiago, Chile on February 25th, and then take a bus to their hometown of Mendoza, Argentina. They informed their relatives that they would be unreachable by phone for a few days due to poor signal reception. However, when their relatives tried to contact them, they were unable to get in touch. As the days passed, there was no activity on Maria Jose Coney and Marina Manazzo's social media accounts, causing their relatives to become increasingly worried. Marina Manazzo's sister took to social media to raise awareness about their disappearance. She posted a photo of they girls with a message stating that they had gone missing on Monday, the 22nd, in Montañita, Ecuador, and asked people to share the information. The families were eager to know if they had left the country and boarded a flight, but their attempts to contact the airline were met with no response. The family of Maria Jose Coney and Marina Manazzo tried to get information from they were supposed to stay with before leaving, but they claimed they never showed up. The family then reported they missing to the emergency services in Ecuador and also contacted the Argentine consulate for assistance. The Argentine consulate got involved on February 27th and sent their fingerprints to Ecuador. This was done because a few days earlier, on February 25th, an unidentified woman's body was found in Montañita and taken to Guayaquil. The authorities compared the fingerprints from Argentina with those of the unidentified body and confirmed that the body was that of Maria Jose Coney. On Saturday, February 27th, police investigated the area where Maria Jose Coney's body was discovered and found the body of Marina Manazzo just 43 yards away. Like Marina Manazzo's body, Maria Jose Coney's was also wrapped in a plastic bag and duct tape. According to the Ecuadorian police, the killer attempted to conceal Marina Manazzo's body by placing an object on top of it, which initially prevented its discovery. During the autopsy, the medical expert determined that Maria Jose Coney's death was caused by severe blunt force trauma to the head. Her injuries also included a broken leg, a broken toe, and what authorities described as genital injuries. Additionally, markings on her wrist suggested that she had been restrained. Marina Manazzo died from 6 stab wounds to the neck and had similar wrist markings, indicating that she had also been tied up. Their deaths occurred on February 23rd. Toxicology tests revealed that their blood contained a high amount of a psychiatric medication. Based on the circumstances of their deaths, police believed that they had not taken the medication voluntarily and may not have even known they had ingested it. It is likely that someone had mixed the medication into their food or drinks without their knowledge. A breakthrough in the case came just 24 hours after the discovery of the second body. The President and Interior Minister of Ecuador announced that the police had made an arrest, sparking mixed emotions among the victims' families. Alberto Segundo Mina Pon, 33, and Aurelio Eduardo Rodriguez, 39, were taken into custody and quickly confessed to the crime, revealing the events that had transpired. Physical evidence found at the home of one of the suspects, Mina Pon, included bloodstains. The police also recovered Marina's phone, backpack, and other belongings near the house. The rapid arrest and immediate confession of they men were met with skepticism by those following the case, leaving many with unanswered questions. Ecuador's Minister of the Interior, José Serrano, claimed that they checked out of their hotel room on February 22 at 2 p.m. According to the men's story, they had their money stolen at the hotel, prompting them to hitchhike to Lima. However, the hotel owner disputed this claim, stating that there was no evidence of theft. Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coni's families found this explanation hard to believe, particularly since they had credit cards that they could have used if they encountered financial difficulties. The lack of activity on the credit cards suggested that either someone stole both the cash and cards or that the men's story was not true. Moreover, they could have accessed the funds in their account without needing the physical card, but they didn't use the money to book travel or accommodations online. According to Ecuador's Minister of the Interior, Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coni's entered a bar and requested 2 glasses of water because they were thirsty and had no money. The bar owner corroborated this account, stating that she provided them with water due to their financial situation. However, it remains unclear whether the money was actually stolen. The minister continued by referencing the testimony of the suspects, who had already confessed to their guilt. One of the suspects, Pon, stated that around 8 p.m. on that day, Rodriguez informed him about 2 Argentinian girls in a bar. Pon and Rodriguez approached they and started a conversation, during which Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coni explained that they were hitchhiking to Lima because they lacked the funds for a bus ticket. This version of events raises several questions. They had purchased plane tickets from Lima to Santiago, Chile, which is over 1,000 miles away. It seems illogical that they would try to save money by hitchhiking and risk missing their flight, which was scheduled for February 25. This conversation with Pon allegedly took place on the evening of February 22, making their decision even more puzzling. However, local police found witnesses who corroborated this unusual story. Since Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coni had no money for a hotel or hostel and needed a place to stay for the night, Pon offered to let them stay at his house. They accepted his offer. A taxi driver was found who confirmed that he drove Marina Manazzo, Maria Jose Coni, and Pon to Pon's home. This picture is of the house where Pon resided. After that, Pon returned to the bar with Rodriguez, as reported by Ecuadorian authorities, and continued drinking. Meanwhile, Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coni were left alone in the house. The intoxicated men returned home around 2:30 a.m., but Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coni were no longer there. The police investigation revealed that Marina Manazzo va Maria Jose Coni had visited a nearby store to purchase soda before returning to the house. A store cashier confirmed this, indicating that Marina Manazzo va Maria Jose Coni still had some money on them. According to Pon's account, when they returned to the house, he stayed in one room with Maria Jose Coni, while Rodriguez was in another room with Marina Manazzo. Pon admitted that he attempted to persuade Maria Jose Coni into a romantic encounter, but she resisted and tried to leave. In a fit of rage, Pon grabbed a stick and struck Maria Jose Coni on the head, killing her instantly. At the same time, he heard a scream coming from the other room. Upon entering the room, he found that Rodriguez had also taken Marina Manazzo's life. Rodriguez immediately fled the scene, leaving Pon to contemplate how to dispose of the bodies. Pon attempted to erase all evidence from the house by wrapping the bodies in plastic bags and duct tape. In the afternoon, he borrowed a cart from an acquaintance and transported the bodies to a wasteland near the ocean shore, approximately 440 yards from his home. It is essential to note that this account is the official version provided by the Ecuadorian authorities. However, this narrative leaves several questions unanswered, including the origin of the marks on her wrists and the presence of a potent drug in the blood of both girls, as revealed by toxicological analysis. Her family questioned the Ecuadorian authorities' account due to numerous inconsistencies in the case. They suspected a possible connection to human trafficking and believed the authorities might be protecting someone. The family's doubts were fueled by several factors. They had run out of money but did not use their credit cards, suggesting that they may have been coerced or deceived. Additionally, it was reported that they were under the influence of drugs, which raised suspicions about their supposed activities. Notably, the only people who claimed to have seen Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coney on the day of their disappearance were a select few who corroborated the authorities' version, including the owner of the bar, a taxi driver, and a cashier who allegedly sold soda to one of they. Furthermore, the town's relatively small population of 5,000 residents made it surprising that no one else came forward as a witness. The families of the victims were confused by several aspects of the case. They couldn't understand why the bodies were found 2 days apart, despite being only 43 yards away from each other. It also seemed strange that Marina Manazzo va Maria Jose Coney had sought help from Pon and Rodriguez, rather than approaching one of the many Argentine tourists in the area. The brother of one of the victims reported seeing used syringes on the floor when he was taken to the crime scene by the Ecuadorian police. However, when he asked about them, the syringes mysteriously disappeared. Furthermore, the syringes were not visible in crime scene photos, and the experts who examined the area denied their existence. The family suspected that Pon and Rodriguez were involved in something more sinister, such as human trafficking, and that they were being used as a cover. The authorities responded by scheduling a second autopsy and a new toxicological examination. Additionally, it was discovered that both defendants had repeatedly changed their story about the events surrounding Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coney deaths. According to one version, Pon denied involvement in the crime and instead claimed that the perpetrator was a Venezuelan illegal substance dealer known as El Chamo, who lived in the area. However, when questioned by the police, El Chamo denied any involvement and offered to take a polygraph test or provide a DNA sample to prove his innocence. The crime scene yielded several DNA samples, including those from Pon and the deceased girls, as well as some unidentified samples. Further testing revealed that the unidentified samples did not match Rodriguez, who was suspected of being Pon's accomplice, nor El Chamo, who was ultimately ruled out as a suspect. A second autopsy, conducted by Argentine experts, revealed that the girls were in a state of vulnerability and unable to defend themselves before their deaths. The autopsy also confirmed that they were subjected to forced intimacy before being killed. The autopsy revealed additional details, including that Maria Jose Coney had bruises and scratches only on one side of her body, suggesting she may have been ejected from a moving vehicle. Furthermore, a new toxicological analysis confirmed that both girls had been given a potent psychiatric medication that can impair a person's willpower. A disturbing reaction swept across Latin America following the incident. Unfortunately, the public's response often blamed the victims, and in this case, they were held responsible for their own deaths. Not only were they criticized by ordinary internet users, but also by well-known public figures. During the same time, Berlin hosted a tourism fair, where Rira gave an interview to a German news agency. Her comments were alarming, as she stated that the deaths were inevitable, given the way they traveled. She also revealed that she had never visited Montanita, a popular tourist destination, because it didn't match her social status. These comments were essentially victim blaming at the state level, which is a sad and concerning fact. Following an interview with Riva Dera, the Ecuadorian government issued an apology to the families of Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coney, and one woman was fired. Among those heavily criticized was Argentine psychiatrist Hugo Narton, who described they as favorable victims and implied that they provoked others to commit crimes. However, after intense backlash, Dr. Narton claimed he had been misunderstood and emphasized that he never intended to excuse or absolve criminals of their responsibilities. A Paraguayan student, Guadalupe Aosta, wrote a Facebook post in response to online comments that blamed Marina Manazzo and Maria Jose Coney for their tragic fate. The post went viral, receiving over 700,000 reposts in the first week. It began with the haunting words, "Yesterday, I was killed." The post went on to describe the violent events. "I refused to be touched, and they smashed my skull open with a stick, leaving me broken. They put me in a black plastic bag, sealed with duct tape, and threw me on the beach, where I was later found a few hours later. The aftermath of my death was more devastating than the act itself. When my body was found, no one bothered to investigate who had taken my life. Instead, I was bombarded with irrelevant and insensitive questions. What was I wearing? Why was I alone? Why did I, a woman, dare to travel by myself? I was in a high-risk area, so what did I expect? The authorities even had the audacity to suggest to my parents that I must have done something wrong, that I must have broken some rule. In death, I realized that I was not considered equal to a man. My demise was somehow my fault, and that's the narrative that would be perpetuated. But if the headlines had read, "Two young men found dead," the public would have been outraged, demanding justice and severe punishment for the perpetrators. The response would have been vastly different if I were a man. I'm speaking out for myself and for all the women who have been silenced, marginalized, and oppressed. I'm speaking out for every woman who has had her dreams crushed and her life destroyed. I urge you to raise your voice, to fight for justice and equality. I'll be with you in spirit, and I promise that one day, there will be so many of us standing together that our voices cannot be silenced. The trial started on August 8, 2016, but was marred by several setbacks. The prosecutor changed 3 times, causing significant delays in the process. Despite these challenges, the prosecution presented a substantial amount of evidence, including witness statements and over 200 physical items collected from the crime scene. The police had found some of the victim's personal belongings, biological fluids, and phones at the house where the crime took place and in the surrounding area. During the trial, Pon maintained his innocence, claiming that his earlier confession was made under police pressure. This statement only reinforced the suspicions of the victims' families that the Ecuadorian authorities were withholding information. Meanwhile, Rodriguez altered his testimony, suggesting that Colombian dealers of illicit substances were involved in 8 deaths. In the trial's first week, the prosecutor revealed that he suspected additional individuals were involved in the case. This suspicion was based on the discovery of 3 more male DNA samples at the crime scene, in addition to the DNA of Rodriguez and Pon. Ultimately, the court found both Pon and Rodriguez guilty, sentencing them to 40 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed under Ecuadorian law. In November 2016, Ecuadorian authorities arrested José Luis Pérez Castro, a 34-year-old man, after finding his DNA at the crime scene. Castro's defense team claimed that he had lived in the house a few weeks prior to the incident and that his DNA was present due to a dental infection. They alleged that he had spat blood onto the wall as a result of this infection. However, the defense's explanation for the presence of Castro's DNA on the victims' bodies was that he must have touched an object or piece of furniture that the police had also handled, thereby transferring his DNA. This argument began to fall apart when a dentist testified in court. It was revealed that Castro had contacted the dentist 2 weeks after the bodies of Marina Manazzo and Maria José Coney were discovered, asking for a note to confirm his alleged dental infection. The dentist refused to provide the note, as he found no evidence of any health issues during his examination of Castro. A man was ejected from a dentist's office after seeking a medical certificate. The dentist refused to issue one, explaining that there needed to be an underlying medical condition causing pain, which he didn't observe. This denial dismantled his defense. Meanwhile, while awaiting trial, Castro broke prison rules by posting on social media about his situation. In a statement, he expressed confidence that God would ultimately prove his innocence. Despite his persistent claims of innocence, Castro was ultimately found guilty and received a 40-year prison sentence, just like two others, Alberto Pon and Eduardo Rodriguez.